And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Alien Spaceship stream. You can be watching from anywhere around the country or the world, and I really appreciate every single one of you. Coming to you from the Spaceship Studios from a galaxy far, far away. Alright, and now we are about to go to the other window so people can see me. And just going here. Switch it this way. Okay, here we go. Alright, hello, it's Alien Spaceship. I hope everybody's having a good day, good evening. And today, although the main trial channels are not streaming the trial that my companions and I are keeping up with, the Fox 2 Detroit is keeping up with it, and we have been watching it, making commentary about it. Oh, hello, Dwayne. Good evening to you, sir. A shout out to you and Sharon. I appreciate your support. So we'll be talking about that, and along with some other things as well tonight. And we do not know why the main networks are not broadcasting the trial, but we certainly have our own different theories about that. But we don't really know for sure what is going on with them. I'm glad that people are focusing on the main part of the trial. It was wrong for somebody to be robbed like that. I think that's always wrong. Okay. So, here. Going to this mode. And Dwayne, I remember I was seeing you the other day over there, and it was nice chatting with you and telling me about what happened with about the Crumbly situation back there. It was, although yesterday it was kind of annoying with some of the comments that were, getting derailing from the trial and getting into attacks on things that didn't really matter, where people should be focused on the trial itself and not attacking different people, that are different at races and stuff. Like some people were doing that the other day, and I think that's a distraction. People are being distracted from the main goal about watching the trial, and I'm glad that you stood up and got people to see the right perspective on things. All right. So, and I will be doing a review on the DTE trial. It was some police interrogation footage today. There was some witnesses. I think from what we were seeing that they didn't really want to be there. That the witnesses, no one really seemed like they wanted to be there. And one of the attorneys seemed extremely, I would say, playing the bad cop. So when someone plays like a bad cop character, they're trying to look like they're more threatening to a person to get the answer out of them, but it's still not really, in my opinion, the best tactic to use. As said, it is, you get more bees with honey, something like that. So being sweet to people, you can actually get more information out, and I do agree with that. And Dwayne says, "Thank you, Alien Spaceship." Oh, you're welcome. And I think a lot of people, there's trolls online, and there's people that have emotional immaturity, and they want to get a reaction, but it's good people to focus on the main dish and not side dishes that aren't even there. Now, reviewing a bit about this trial for today, DT trial. That is actually not the trial I was looking at, but so we're going to go this way and get the right trial. Yeah, so anyway. There is some... Yes, definitely mean and rude. Mean and rude. And I think that's not the way an attorney should handle it. For instance, we've watched a lot of reactions from the Johnny Depp trial. We've seen how Elaine handled the situation and how Amber was on the stand. And it really shows when they act inappropriately, it'll actually turn off a jury, certainly. Especially when the defendant did something so horrid as what they did. Yeah, so there was interrogation footage that was being shown, and we were making the chat, and I were making a lot of different commentary about it. It was quite funny. So, at the same time, just kind of reviewing what was going on during the trial. So, doing an overview about the trial is trial of the, let's see, underway. Okay, here we go. Trial of the murder store in Hills underway, with the two defendants, Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo, accused of posing as DTE workers to gain entry to the Murray's home in October 24. The men face charges of felony murder and unlawful imprisonment. Separate juries. In an unusual arrangement, Hernandez and Zuazo are being tried at the same time in front of two separate juries in Oakland County. Although I have only been watching trials for a couple of years, I've never heard or seen of a situation where there's two different juries at the same time. I think that is quite something I've not seen before. Same thing the other day where the gun cleaning gone wrong, when that trial happened, it lasted for a day. So that was something I didn't see before. So I'm seeing things I've not seen before lately. All right, Linda Murray's testimony. The victim's widow, Linda Murray, has provided crucial testimony detailing the 2-day ordeal. She stated that the two suspects first came to the door claiming to be checking for a gas leak in October 10, 2024, but were turned away. When they returned the next morning, they were let inside the house. Linda testified that her husband was led to a basement, and when the two men came back upstairs, they demanded money and jewelry. And I think that's very low for them to try to take advantage of anybody, especially a woman, that is heartless of them. And this defendant shows no emotion. The really big orange one that we were seeing in the interrogation today, he showed no emotion, and the other one also, that the other one, they both seem like they don't have emotions. He was kind of nice today, I guess. He saw the jury rolling their eyes at him yesterday when he was rude to mean to the older victim, Miss Linda. Okay, understood. Oh, hello, Alicia. Good evening to you. Yeah, I think that today he was still being mean, but he may have been nicer than he was yesterday, and hopefully as the trial goes on, he gets nicer and nicer. I remember how he was to Santa Claus yesterday. There's a person on the stand that resembles Santa Claus, and we were talking about how with Santa Claus, the character, he was not really nice to him. So yeah, so he seemed a little bit nicer today. Yeah, hopefully he can tone it down. I hope you're doing well, Alicia. It's always good to see you in chat. So, in this situation, it's like, I remember that I was taught by Gene Capri and just by my own intuition that you have to be, to defend a client, you have to be a good way of conveying your personality. Oh, hello, Becky. Good evening. And it's a much later evening for you, of course, where you are, but yes, good evening. And where I am, the sun is setting, and it's starting to get it's starting to get dark now where I am. The moon is out over there, over the trees. So it is starting to get dark where I am. So, yeah, you certainly with a lawyer must conduct themselves in a proper manner to be polite and good to people on the stand and everybody. I think it's just a mutual golden rule to be good to everybody, but sometimes these people, I think, they have a temper to them. I don't know, they get too passionate. They play bad cop. And when they play a bad cop, they're going to try to do scare tactics and stuff happy Friday to you, Becky. Okay. Understood. Thank you for telling me the time and the date. And when you're doing that, it will actually turn off a jury and turn off everybody, just like with the Depp trial. And Amber Heard lost. And a lot of times, it's selling yourself over whatever is you're trying to sell. So there's also selling yourself, and the person does not sell themselves right. They're not going to sell anything right. On top of the stigma of their defendant, of their client. Alicia says the trial is so odd with the two juries. Exactly, Alicia. I definitely agree with that. It's something that I have never seen before, although I am new technically to trial world. I've been a couple of years. Back in the Depp trial is when I came on trial watching. So I've been there for a couple of years. I've not had 20 or 30 years of watching trials, so I don't really know if it's a thing that happens sometimes. But it's something that I have never seen before or heard about from anybody, two juries. It looks like they just want to get it over with and done as fast as possible. And Dwayne says, yes, Alien Santa Claus got mad and bid him back. He was ready to fight the attorney. Yeah, absolutely. Because when he is doing that stuff, that guy really wanted to square up. He was ready to square up, and he put him on the naughty list, for sure. And when you have to understand, like, these people are, empathy is very important, and empathy is lacking. An emotional empathy, where I'm not saying that I'm perfect or anyone is perfect. Anybody can lose their temper or do something incorrect, okay? Everybody can have faults, but I don't know what he was taught, but he was taught wrong the way he conveyed his message to the jury and everybody else. You can't just act like that towards witnesses, and especially people that are going through a traumatic event. I know he wants to defend his client, and it's good to defend your client. And attorney will do his job to defend a client, even if they're evil, understandably. But if you do it the wrong way, you're going to get the wrong results for yourself and reputation. So I definitely think that dignity, honor, and respect are important virtues to have. Alicia says, I've never seen it, and it's an odd way of doing it. Like today, one of the jury panels left early. I feel all the evidence is important for both juries to hear, but I digress. Alicia, I completely agree with you 1,000%. And we were confused. We're watching directly from Detroit Fox 2. And we were very confused about, we thought it was over for the day. And I was like, okay, chat, good night, peace, and see you on the spaceship later. But they kept on going. And a lot of times this has happened to me before. When you're watching a trial and they excuse a jury, but people think that the trial is over for the day. There's been a few, like once or a couple of times in my time on trial watching that I'm like, okay, chat, good night, but it was actually not good night yet. But this time it looked really convincing. But then there's still another jury there. It's like the X-Files theme plays in my head. It's like there's still another jury there. They're not even over yet. What kind of diabolical witchcraft is this? What kind of sorcery is going on here? Because it's like both juries need to see what's going on. It's like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Like what kind of a show are they trying to pull off here? Yeah, and yep, it was over for just one of the defendants. Just weird. Yeah, and in my opinion, I think they should see both. But thank you for clarifying, Lisa. It was just one defendant. Yeah. And like you said, sorry I wasn't online today. Which trial are we talking about? Thanks. Okay, it's a trial that's on Fox Detroit 2. I could have dyslexically said that incorrectly, but that's what the channel is called, something like that. And scared. Alicia, scared. Okay, so the trial that we're referring to is the DTE workers fraud trial. So it is Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo, accused of posing as DTE workers to gain entry in Murray's home in October 24. The men face charges of felony murder and unlawful imprisonment. So it's like there's this big, gigantic, like oversized Impaloopa, okay? Like, and there's this other person that is another defendant. And they broke into this little woman's house and demanded jewelry and they were robbing her in her house. And that is the trial that we're referring to. And there's two different juries in one trial. So there's two defendants being tried at the same time with two different juries. Wayne said, I'm surprised that the jury didn't throw their notebooks at the rude male defense attorney. Yeah, I think that they had a lot of self-restraint not to do that, because the guy was just, he likes to hear himself talk, right? Like he has teamuitis, and he likes to hear himself talk. And as I said, today they were showing they're showing interrogation footage. The guy was extremely no emotion. The defendant had no emotion, and he was just running his mouth. And he said pretty guilty to me from what he was saying. I could gather from that and the way that he presented himself and his body language. And then on the stand, you had the mother-in-law. I think that's who it was. And one was testifying, and she didn't look like she wanted to be there, and she was talking about her experience. Okay, Becky, understood. Okay. And the main trial channels are not running it, and we're not really too sure. Now, there seems to be some racial issues in the trial where people, like some trolls in the chat, were talking about some racial stuff. So it could have to do with the different religions, something like that, where that is a factor in the trial. So maybe they don't want to run it because of that. I am just making an educated guess. I don't really know what the reason, or their cameras aren't in there, but I've seen LC chat. The LC has posted clips of it, but they have not posted the whole trial. I don't really know what the reason they're not running it is for certain. I mean, hopefully they pick it up. Alicia says his daughter was married to the large one. Oh, okay. Thank you, Alicia. Yeah, the large one. I mean, at YSL, because some people didn't watch YSL, but I did, along with some others. I was in the trenches of YSL, and there was a lot of times we would make jokes about the certain people, like that we thought were the bad characters, and in general it was quite funny, and we did it for humor. And yeah, we just had a field day with these defendants. And we're going after them for their bad, evil behavior. Like, for instance, with the Adelson trial, she, had her son-in-law murdered, so we were glad to see her locked up. But, because the person was evil. So to see the evil people get their day is a satisfying thing to watch, although none of us are perfect. These people that do these horrid actions, we like to see justice being served. So, yeah, we had a good time today with that, watching it and there's new people there, because it's in a different channel than the one we usually watch, so there's different people there. It was eclectic. And I liked meeting the different people in chat today. It was pretty cool. So as I said, but going to the main part of the trial, I think the defendants are guilty of sin, and we saw the different surveillance footage, we saw the different witnesses, we saw the different interrogations, and I still can gather that it is guilty, in my opinion. All right, Becky says, YSL, my God, it went on forever. Oh, I mean, Glanville was saying that he didn't want to be doing the trial until the next Super Bowl. He was concerned about that. And it ended a year ago this December. I remember when it ended, and I was with Shaza and the other ones that were my crew in that trial, and it was just really crazy for it to end when we were there for so long. Like when Addie and her mods were still on the channel at LC, that is when it was going on. So that's how long ago it was. It went on forever. Absolutely. I think there's supposed to be even more witnesses, but they decided to cut back. It's like they're gonna have more witnesses, 100 years from now. That we were all making jokes is gonna last 100 years. So it was quite wild. And I remember I had Christmas decorations up when it ended. I'm like, wow, it really lasted. What a way to end it. It was lasted for a while, and some trials, I said, last one day or last months and months and months and months. As I said, I think that this attorney that we're speaking of that's disturbing, that was being rude today and more rude yesterday, is being like Elaine from the Depp trial. And for instance, when Amber Heard was on the stand, she was being rude and not admitting to anything wrong when it would be better if she had a better conduct when she was on the stand. They didn't advise her to have a better conduct on the stand. So that is just like an analysis about the trial. As I said, no emotion from these defendants. No emotion at all. It's just they don't feel anything. They're just out for themselves. Now, I will say in the interrogation footage, I'm not a expert on this, but the person during the interrogation seemed quite uncomfortable. The large one. He seemed quite uncomfortable. Moving around a little bit nervous for himself, but not remorseful about his behavior. Right. And continuing with the summary about the trial for today is separate juries. An unusual arrangement. Hernandez and Zuazo are being tried at the same time in front of two separate juries. In the Oakland County, Linda Murray's testimony, the victim's widow, Linda Murray, has crucial testimony dealing with a 2-day ordeal. She stated that the two suspects first came to the door claiming to be checking for gas leak in October 10, 2024, but were turned away. When they returned the next morning, they were let inside the house. Linda testified that her husband... Oh, you're welcome, Becky. You're welcome. Linda testified that her husband was led to the basement, and when the two men came back upstairs, they demanded money and jewelry. So when they when they're demanding money and jewelry, it's a very low thing, as I said, to do this to anybody, especially women. And dude's a big Jabba the Hutt looking thing. It's really cringe. She also recounted being bound with duct tape and hit in the face by Hernandez after she saw blood and Zuazo and began to scream. Targeted crime. Prosecutors allege that the crime was a planned robbery, not a random act. Evidence suggests that Hernandez had interacted with Murray's pawn shop in the past and had ordered DTE signs for a stolen truck used in crime. DNA evidence. A forensic analyst testified about DNA evidence collected from the scene from items in Hernandez's Jeep. The analyst showed DNA matches for Zuazo and Hernandez on balaclavas, as well as a match for Hussein Murray on the t-shirt and boots. Crime scene description. A forensic laboratory investigators described the scene where Hussein Murray was found in the basement, bottom with duct tape, zip ties. Hernandez's defense. While admitting Hernandez illegally entered the home, his attorneys argue that he did not intend to delete or kill Murray and was not directly involved in the fatal beating. Zuazo's defense. Zuazo's attorneys maintained that his client was wrongly identified and was not even at the scene during the murder. In the DTE imposter murder trial, the two defendants, Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zanzu, had adopted distinct defense strategies. Both defenses aim to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, with Hernandez's attorney admitting on the robbery but denying murder. Zuazo's attorney arguing his client was misidentified and was not even at the scene. But denies his involvement in the fatal beating of Hussein Murray, admits to illegally entering. The defense concedes that Hernandez illegally entered Murray's home under the false pretense of being a DTE worker. I am back, everybody. It went out for a second. Alright, popping this back out. Alright. Let's start over. So, Carlos Hernandez. We're going to start over. Okay. So, Hernandez's defense acknowledges his presence during the home invasion but denies his involvement in the fatal beating of Hussein Murray. Admits to illegal entry. Oh, hello, Saw Girl. Good to see you. Welcome. Admits to illegal entry. The defense concedes that Hernandez illegally entered the Murray's home under the false pretense of being a DTE worker. And Saw Girl says, "Me too, Becky," and she's watching it as well. That's nice. Argues against premeditated murder. Hernandez's attorney claims that the robbery was a separate incident and that the plan never involved deleting killing Murray. The defense are arguing that Hernandez did not possess a required state of mind for a felony murder conviction. Denies physical participation in the murder. The defense asserts that Hernandez did not participate in the physical beating that led to Murray's deletion death. Challenges evidence interpretation. During cross-examination, Hernandez's attorney has challenged the prosecution's interpretation of evidence, such as arguing that using duct tape while wearing gloves, as suggested by lack of fingerprints, is difficult. So yeah, that is their defense, trying to, raise a reasonable doubt in their opinion to try to get their clients see off the hook. And this is Joshua's defense strategy specifically. Zuazo's defense focuses on his purported misidentification, claiming that prosecutors have failed to prove his involvement in the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. focuses on identification. Zuazo's attorney, Michael McCarthy, has argued that while Carlos Hernandez can be clearly identified in the video evidence, the footage does not clearly identify Zuazo. McCarthy has emphasized that the prosecution must prove Zuazo's involvement. Questions reliability of witness. Defense has challenged the testimony of witnesses who claim to identify Zuazo from the crime scene footage. McCarthy cross-examined. A former boss of Zuazo suggested that the boss had a vendetta, that his identification of Zuazo was unreliable. The defense also questions Linda Murray's memory, implying it may have been influenced by the media's reports, questions police investigation. During the cross-examination of a detective, Zuazo's attorney noted that the lack of visible license plates suggested inconsistencies in identifying the vehicles used. Emphasis, lack of fingerprint evidence. Both defenses have highlighted the absence of fingerprint evidence, trying the defendants to the crime scene, a point that Zuazo's attorney used to create reasonable doubt. Alright, so while Carlos Hernandez's defense argues he did not participate in the beating of... Hello, Messenger. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome to the chat. I am doing fine. Today was an interesting day with the DTE trial. And when we had the DTE trial, we were, as I said, I believe that defendants are guilty. That's a lot what we did today over at the Fox to Detroit over there. And some people in the chat are catching up with the trial that was on earlier, but it was not on Law and Crime. It was over on the Fox's Fox Detroit channel. But I'm doing fine. I had a good day. Thank you for asking. Oh, prayers for your knee surgery. I see that you had the knee surgery yesterday, so hopefully you have a speedy recovery with that. Thank you for updating us what was going on. And right now what I'm doing is talking about some things about the trial. While Carlos Hernandez's defense argued that he did not participate in the beating of Hussein Murray, the prosecution has presented multiple pieces of evidence suggesting his direct involvement or linkage to the murder. DNA evidence and recovered items. DNA at the crime scene. The prosecutor stated DTE. DNA evidence and recovered items. DNA at the crime scene. The prosecutor stated that during the opening arguments that DNA from both Hernandez and his co-defendant Joshua Zuazo was found in Murray's basement and pieces of duct tape used during the crime. Blood-stained shoes. A pair of shoes with blood and DNA matching Hussein Murray's was discovered inside the vehicle used at the crime scene. I'll explain to you what that means. DTE refers to an energy, the largest energy company in Michigan. Hello, Joyce. Good evening to you. Welcome to the chat. Right. Thank you. Yes, it's the largest energy company in Michigan. The defendants in the trial are accused of posing as DTE workers to gain entry to the victim's home. Okay. And they're trying to pose as those workers to get in. There's this movie from the early 90s where you got these two con artists and they're pretending to be something like that and they're stealing a TV. That's what this reminds me of. It was a comedy movie. It wasn't dark like this, but that's what that reminds me of. It got to be wolves in sheep's clothing, as it's said, that people can try to come in a house disguised as something to not let anybody in. To not let anybody in, and front doors are not the best. Usually, as I said, are not usually favored by me. Usually, I think that you never really know who's at the front of the door, so it's good to always use caution. It's unfortunate when something like this happens. I know what people do, and to take advantage of somebody, people like this and overpower them is really evil. And as I said, I reiterate that there is no emotion at all. No emotion. Stolen jewelry. Jewelry boxes and custom jewelry belonging to... Well, it's okay, Saw Girls. It's all good. Jewelry boxes and costume jewelry belonging to Linda Murray were found in Hernandez's luggage when he was arrested. Now, sometimes there's a situation where a lawyer, an attorney, will have no case, and really much to defend. And when you have somebody that, as I said, very evil to do this action, that seems like they were sloppy, they left DNA, they have the jewelry in a luggage box. It's like it's quite clear that it's good they got caught, because they could have done it a certain way where it would have been a little bit more difficult, because they made it more difficult to prove that there's DNA and that he had possessions of these boxes. It will be good to get for them to get caught. At the same time, it would have been much harder to prove that they were involved with this if there was lack of DNA and lack of the boxes items. Yes, blame the phones. Yes. I know what y'all are talking about, because I'll get typos too, especially on mobile. My tablet's the worst. I have an Amazon tablet. I prefer the other types of tablets. I mean, HP made a tablet that works very well. I got an Amazon tablet that is kind of like a Temu tablet, sort of. And remember, I'll be typing in something and it says a whole different sentence. And then it press send. And it press send. That one's the worst one for typos. Yeah. You have to have it register what something means, or else it's going to automatically correct it in a blink of an eye to something else. So I've had it happen before. And so clearly there's DNA and there's jewelry boxes with these items on there. In his possession, obviously. So, actions after the assault. Attack on Linda Murray. Linda Murray, Hussein's widow, testified that after Hernandez and Zuazo came up from the basement, Zuazo had blood on his clothing, and when she started to scream, Hernandez struck her in the face before tying her up with duct tape. This testimony directly links Hernandez to violence during the incident. So, that, as I said, very cruel to do that to anybody, or especially a woman. That's just, they want to pick on people like this, and they don't want to go after somebody that can fight back more easily, and they do these things out of desperation. They're so just pathetic, really. And the thief and escape. Linda Murray testified that Hernandez took her watch, keys, and phone after the assault, confirming his participation in the robbery. He was arrested the next day in Louisiana. Scared. Well, I'm glad he was caught. All right? I'm personally glad he was caught. Purchase of materials. The prosecution shows juror surveillance video of Hernandez and Zuazo purchasing items like vests and duct tape from Home Depot, Lowe's, and prior to attacks. Well, this time Walmart gets a break. Usually they get everything from Walmart, so Walmart's given a break this time. Prior visits to Murray's store. Prosecution established that Hernandez had visited Murray's pawn shop and jewelry store multiple times before the murder, and even met with Murray's face-to-face. This suggests that the crime was planned and targeted. Fabricated DTE signs. Evidence indicates that Hernandez purchased the fake DTE signs and placed them on a swollen truck. Not a swollen truck, that doesn't make any sense. A stolen truck used at the crime. The defense argument hinges on Hernandez not participating in the fatal beating in the basement, but a combination of DNA evidence, Linda Murray's testimony, and proof of premeditation planning presents a significant challenge to the position. All right, the most U.S. states felony murder is... This is what felony murder is. Most U.S. states, felony murder is legal rule that holds person criminally liable for murder if a deletion death occurs during a commission of dangerous felony, regardless of whether they intend to lead kill. This expands the definition of murder to include unintentional deletion deaths and applies to all participants in the underlying felony, not just the individual who caused the deletion death. While specific statutes vary by state, prosecutors generally must prove the following to secure felony murder conviction: commission of a predicate felony. The death must occur during the commission of a specified felony. In Michigan, the list predicates felonies include arson, robbery, carjacking, and home invasion. Robbery and home invasion are the most relevant to the DTE imposter case. Casual link to deletion death. The killings must be direct result of illegal acts. Does not need to premeditated. doesn't need to be premeditated. All right, timing. The deletion death must happen during the felony's commission, the attempted commission on the immediate flight from it, malice. Unlike traditional murder, the prosecution does not have to prove intent, deletion, kill. The malice required for murder is legally inferred to from the defendant's intention to commit dangerous felony. Michigan's felony. The murder rule is particularly relevant to DTE imposter case. The Michigan Penal Code stipulates that murder committed during the perpetration or the attempted perpetration of certain felonies constitutes first-degree murder, which is plausible by mandatory life in prison without possibility of parole. Michigan case, law requires malice. While intent to delete kill isn't necessary, Michigan law requires the prosecution to prove that the defendants acted with malice as established in 1980. Case People versus Aaron, malice can be inferred if the defendant acted with wanton and willful disregard for the likelihood that the natural tendency their behavior is the cause of deletion, death, or great bodily harm. Evidence must be presented by the prosecution. Hello, Careville. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome to the stream. Careville, we're talking about a trial, the DTE murder trial. The DTE robbery trial, rather. And although there is murder involved, but still they're posing as the DET workers. They broke into someone's house and did theft and murder. So it is quite graphic. Oh, hello, Becky. Good to see you. Glad that you're back with us. The evidence presented by prosecution includes the use of DTE and impersonations to enter the home, the violent assault. Oh, okay, Careville. Okay. The evidence presented by the prosecution including the use of DTE impersonations to enter the home, the violent assault on Hussein Murray. The assault on his wife is intended to show that Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo acted with the required malice, while felony murder is a key charge in the DTE trial. The charge of felony murder is critical in this case because it allows the prosecution to seek a first-degree murder conviction even if they can't prove who landed the fatal blow. All participants in the robbery who acted with malice can be held equally responsible for the deletion deaths occurred during the commission of the crime. This is why the jury must decide on intent and actions both Carlos and Joshua Zuazo. Now, the reason why the other defendant is saying, the other defense is, as I said, there's two different juries and two different trials happening at the same time, at one time. Like, they're being tried both together concurrently, and two different juries. As I said before, if they had a lack of DNA and a lack of evidence of the belongings, they would have a better defense in what they're trying to do, but it doesn't. As I said, they did it, and they're gonna be locked up, and that's good. But from the defense's perspective, one of the defendants, he's having a situation where he admits that he broke into the house, but he didn't do the murder and things like that. Because that's even more of a harsher sentence than the other part. And Becky says, "Yeah, Alien, I meant to ask, is it not really confusing?" It's very, very confusing. It's an extremely confusing trial that I'm still trying to get the puzzle pieces together on. As we learn together about this, I, you got two juries at the same time, and it's something I've never seen before, heard about. All right, so this is like, why are there two juries? Is a question that I have. That's one of the confusing attributes of this trial. The two juries in DTE imposter murder trial are in place to address the conflicting defenses. Kerville said, "That's the problem. If you joined your friend on a break in and a murder happened, you go down with everything, and I feel that is fair." I agree with you, Kerville. I think it's fair too. I don't know. I wasn't. Yeah, I was not. Let's just say I was not attending that trial watch party. All right, but somebody else can answer that in the chat if they know off the top of their head. I was thinking the Menendez brothers, that they probably had one, but I'm not. I don't know if they did or they didn't. Query the logic is that it's an accomplice to a crime, right? Correct. The Menendez brothers had two. The Menendez brothers had two separate juries during their first trial in '93, which was highly unusual procedure. The two jury setup was used to address a conflicting evidence and protect each brother's constitutional rights, but ultimately resulted in mistrial when both juries became deadlocked. I thought there was together, but might be right. Yeah. The reason for two juries during the Menendez trial. The main reason for the two jury system was because one brother, Eric Menendez, had confessed to a psychologist who tapped the confession. Evidence: the recorded confession was admissible as evidence against Eric, the person who made it. The conflict, however, the statement also implicated that Lyle Menendez, because Lyle's lawyers could not cross examine Eric about the confession, Eric would be incriminating himself, allowing a single jury to hear it. It would have violated Lyle's Sixth Amendment right to confront the witness against him. Carroll said, "I can see why one guy wants a separate jury, as he is hoping they will let him off the murder charge to confess for the robbery." Ah, okay, Careful. Thank you for the legal analysis about it. I've just read about their trial, Careful. I was 9 in 93. Oh. I was non existent in 93. I was, you know where I was? I was in an alien spaceship in 93. I was not on Earth yet. Oh, Amy, welcome to the stream. So great to see you. Oh, we are reviewing the trial of the DTE robbery trial right now, which is a trial that's on the Detroit Fox 2. And Carol said, "I can see why the one guy wants a separate jury, as he is hoping they will let him off the murder charge for confessing robbery." Yeah, kind of complete deal. Right. The All right, so the reasons. The main reason for the two jury system was because one brother, Eric Menendez, had confession to psychologist who tapped the confession. the evidence, the recorded confession was admissible as evidence against Eric, the person who made it. We read that part. Outcome of the 2 jury trial. Messenger says that depends on the state working for the courts. Working for the courts in New York City, I've seen cases like that. Sometimes it's conflicting testimonies. Okay, Messenger, thank you for your take on that. Okay. So sometimes it's conflicting testimonies. Okay. The outcome of the 2 jury trial, conflicting perspectives. Oh, understood, Joyce. Understood. Yeah, 21 forever. Facts. Yeah, shout out to the 21-year-olds. Facts. And he said, I miss you guys, but I'm taking a break right now. Those baby trials just really hurt my heart. I couldn't today. Oh, yeah. I am glad that you are, focusing on your mind and your well being, because it is very unfortunate about when things like this happen, where you have these trials can be very disturbing, and there are things that we have, this things that'll disturb us, and everyone has different disturbing things that'll disturb them. So I'm glad that you're taking a break for your own good, and it's very graphic trials. I mean, I've gotten bad dreams from trials I've seen, so do what's best for you. But we miss you too, Amy, and Law and Crime isn't really streaming anything right now, so we're just focusing on this other trial from a different channel at the moment. And Messenger said, well, thanks for asking. Thanks. Carol said, a guy I went to high school with committed a robbery with a coworker of his a couple of years ago. The homeowner re-drummed the coworker, and he is on the hook for the death as well. The death as well. That is really, yeah, you got to be, people that are accomplice to a crime, I definitely think it is a noble to do that, because even if they didn't do the murder part, they were an accomplice to it. Like, they assisted in it. So thank you for sharing. Carville said the coworker told him like 10 years earlier that there was a safe with a ton of money in it. So that is why they went there. Oh, I wasn't even the same owners. Oh, okay. I'll read that again. The coworker told him like 10 plus years earlier that there was a safe with a ton of money in it. That is why they went there. Oh, it wasn't even the same owners. Oh my goodness. Oh, and that's just sick to do that to somebody, and that's why I would recommend people to not say what they have, well, I have nothing anybody would want, I'm just a broke alien from another planet. So, but people, yeah, certainly I would say for people to be safe, no pun intended, is not tell people what people have, and for people that are just evil and sick, karma does its thing, and that, trying to steal someone else's belongings is really evil. It's like that person worked for it, that person worked for it, and they have or say inherited something, and then somebody wants to steal it from them. That is so sick. Okay. So I concur with you, Caraville. I totally agree with you about that. They need to be locked up, those accomplices. Yeah. Amy said, I knew you guys would understand. Thank you for the support. Alien, beautiful words. Oh, you're very welcome, Amy. And group hug, as we always like to say, group hug. I see what you're saying, Amy. Not Amy, but Becky. I see what you're saying. I'm going to get to that in just a sec. Okay. Becky says, so farmers here can carry weapons. A farmer shot and unalived a person who wouldn't leave his property. The guy had broken into his farmhouse and he was jailed for murder. The guy had broken into his farmhouse and jailed for murder. So you're saying the person that defended themselves was jailed for murder? I may have read that wrong. Let me read it again. And so the farmers here carry weapons. A farmer shot and unalived a person who wouldn't leave his property. The guy had broken into the farmhouse and he was jailed for. Okay. Yeah. Now in America too, I think if I. Okay, that's the same thing over here in the States, from what I've read. If that in self-defense, it depends on the states. Okay, I hear what you're saying, Becky, and I do think that. And I don't know the laws over there, and I wasn't like at this. I don't know enough about the case, but I'll say this about the generalized statement: is that yes, people have a right to defend themselves if they are, in my opinion, their homes or their little farm. Especially if someone's trying to break in and do something nefarious, I think that they should have a right to defend themselves. And it does sound messed up where somebody's trying to defend themselves and they can be charged for murder. Yeah, now I do think that is even here in the States. And depending on which area, it depends on the state, because each state has different laws. And I do think people should defend themselves. Oh, and the person had no weapon on okay, he had no weapon on him. Okay, thank you for the clarification, because I'm not really forgot about that for a second. Okay, so the person had no weapon on them and they're breaking into the farmhouse. As I said, I have to do research that case to give a really complete analysis, but yeah, somebody should be able to defend themselves if they're breaking into someone's house. But if they had no weapons on them, I could see where people might wonder what the intentions were. But yeah, people can get weapons illegally. So if we do not know what weapons a person, like, so for instance, say someone's going to break into a farmhouse in a region where weapons are illegal, they could get a weapon illegally and bring it on. So maybe the person wasn't aware if the person had a weapon on them. And if somebody's breaking into a farmhouse, they could tell them that they're on private property and they're trespassing. And police, and I don't know what the police are like in your country, but the police sometimes can take a moment to get there sometimes. And it is good for somebody to do what they can to defend themselves or at least stop it from occurring. Now, there's legal even in the States that they can be charged for murder for defending themselves. Hello, Anna. It's great to see you. I always appreciate you here. Welcome to the chat. Yay! Anna's here. So, in my analysis, I do not know the entire situation, and I do not know if the person had a weapon on them or if the farmer perceived the person had a weapon on them. Those two factors have to be considered. If they asked the person to leave the property and they didn't, or like what did the circumstances are. But in the generalized statement of if somebody is defending themselves and they feel they're being threatened and they're still locked up anyway, that is a good reason people think that they should not be charged for defending themselves. If they were already in a life-threatening situation, not saying that was a life-threatening situation. This is a different situation. There's a life-threatening situation where then they have to be charged for murder on top of that. So yeah, I would like to know if the person had a weapon on them. Although the person that was murdered can't testify, I would like to know if they're asked to leave the property. But as I said, someone breaks in someone's house, it's kind of a messed up situation. So I understand what you're saying, Becky. And it's over here in the States too, I believe, in some places. Now, Texas, it's where people can, if you walk on someone's property, you get deleted instantly. Like, if they didn't it depends on the state. So, yeah, I would say in a perfect world setting, not knowing any additional circumstances, if somebody was in self-defense and the other person had a weapon and they felt like they were being threatened or someone was stealing their stuff in their property, and they couldn't get police there on time, I would believe they, in my opinion, should defend themselves. in a perfect setting and not be charged with murder. But of course, there's going to be an investigation on anybody gets murdered. There's going to be an investigation and an autopsy and things like that. So that is also true where it would be, yeah, messed up if you're trying to defend yourself and you're getting locked up for defending yourself. It is kind of like a catch-22 situation because you don't defend yourself, you can get deleted the other way. Because, if there's no weapons, and that's good, where we would want to have people to defend themselves with weapons because criminals can have the weapons anyway. They can get them illegally or they could use something else. Or if they don't even have a weapon, they could just go in there and use a giant vase and throw it at your head and try to break your head open. So there's a couple of troubleshooting certain scenarios with that. At the same time, I can understand where there are these other parts where you don't know what the person has on them or not. Right. Now, Becky says, the farmer asked the trespasser to leave. He wouldn't. The farmer unalived him. The trespasser had no weapon, but broke into a farmhouse with the intention of robbing the farmer. Yeah, and as I said, I do not like robberies. I don't like people that are robbing other people. And where I am, or somewhere like that, they would have been lit up like the 4th of July. But yeah. Somebody should, not rob other people, and I think that is wrong to do. I think we could all agree that we wouldn't want to be robbed. And I do think that the person had a right to defend themselves under the circumstances that you are speaking of. Tons of fun carving, man. I'm glad you have to catch a stream again. So, all right. So, hello to you, tons of fun carving. Thank you for telling me hello. I appreciate you, man. And Messenger says, as a social worker for the courts, I've had young men tell me that it's easier to get a pew-pew gun than Pampers for their kids, sadly. Messenger, that's very messed up. We should have in a perfect world, if possible, I believe people should defend themselves, but they should be able to do what they can for their kids too, or they should have even more for their kids, Pampers for their kids even more than the latter. So I do think that there is an unbalanced situation what you speak of in that context, and no system is perfect, and there certainly can be improvements. So yes, Becky, that is quite a also in the States it's a factor too. A messed up situation, somebody defending themselves and they're locked up for defending themselves based on the information that you're telling me. And what's a farmer supposed to do? Now, if the police can be called in addition to defending himself, that would be good. In addition to that. But now police, as I said, can take their time getting there. And I do think, as I said, people should have a right to defend themselves and right to defend their property from robbery. And hopefully in a perfect world where they're not charged for defending themselves. But as I said, that, it's a tricky rabbit hole there. Even in the States, if someone is deleted, yeah, there's going to be some sort of a investigation on that. And I think it's good for people to have, like farmers that have a camera and to have you more evidence and proof about what he's saying, because when the person is not alive anymore, not that I'm saying he did the wrong thing, it's up for interpretation, people can debate on that. When you don't have a right to, you have the person there, they can't really get their side of the story, but as I said, they did what they had to do in my opine. And Messenger said, yes, some response time for police is outrageous. And, a farmer does work hard for what he has to do. And like what Carafil and I were speaking about with the person that broke into the house, the friend that he knew, and they went in to steal the safe. And then when they went to go steal the safe, they, you don't want someone stealing your safe. And you would want, the person should have a right to defend themselves, especially this case we're talking about now. So, Anna, the case that we're talking about now is the DTE trial. And although the other people know what it's about, I'm going to explain to you what it is about. It is right here, the information. The DTE trial refers to criminal prosecution Carlos Jose. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Law and Crime has no trials. Law and Crime has no trials, but another other channel, Detroit Fox 2, has a trial on, and the DTE trial refers to the criminal prosecution of Carlos Jose Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo, who are accused of posing as DTE energy workers to murder jewelry store owner Hussein Murray in Rochester Hills, Michigan home in October 24. Trial is currently underway in Oakland County with witness testimony beginning October 25. And shout out to all of you in chat. I appreciate every single one of you. And thank you all for being here and hanging out with us. All right, case details. The suspect, Hernandez Zuazo, was allegedly denied entry by Murray and his wife, Linda, on October 10, 24, after claiming to be checking for gas leak. The crime, they allegedly returned the next day and gained access to the house. Hernandez and Zuazo are accused of beating Murray to deletion in his basement and tying up his wife, Linda Murray, before stealing from his home. It's not on Law and Crime. It's not on LC, rather. I will abbreviate it because I want to abbreviate it. As I like the word LC, it reminds me of something from school. Yeah, LC is not doing that trial. No trial on LC. It's just on another channel. It's 2 a.m. where I am eating chocolate. Ah, I love chocolate. Remember the other day... we're going to go on a chocolate rant. Scared. Okay, Messenger, prayers for you. Thank you for hanging out with us this evening. And get some rest. And prayers for a speedy recovery from your surgery. Thank you for keeping us posted. And your commentary tonight. Okay. Okay, so I'm watching the DTE trial. And it is Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo are the two accused as posing as the DTE energy workers to murder jewelry store owner Hussein Murray in his Rochester Hills, Michigan home in October 24. A trial is currently underway in Oakland County with witness testimony beginning in October 25. Well, tons. If there's a trial about that, I'll cover it. As I cover all trials that I can cover. I'm scared. Alright. Lori says, I am here, but running errands, so can't type much, so there. Oh, okay, Lori. Thank you for listening into our trial. Our stream. So thank you for listening in. Okay, so Anna, I'll explain to you everything about this trial that I'm reviewing. So these two guys broke into this woman's house and they stole a bunch of stuff and committed a murder. And one of them looks like a gigantic, your discretion advised, a gigantic whale, huge whale. And the suspects, Hernandez and Zuazo, were allegedly denied entry by Murray and his wife, Linda, on October 10, 24, after claiming to be checking for gas leak. Yeah, home invasion, some serious shit. Yes, indeed. The crime, they allegedly returned the next day. And gaining access to the house, Hernandez and Zuazo are accused of beating Murray to death in his basement and tying up his wife, Linda Murray, before stealing from the home. The thing about this, alright, chat, is that She rejected them the first day. They're disguised as DTE hires, and I'll tell you all this: I advise you all to obviously be careful about who you let into your house. I think you all would know this, of course. And to be leery of what the front door, who you let in, because these people disguised as something they're not. Because they try to go to her the first time, and the second time they tricked her into letting them in, and they do this evil action. Arrests and charges. The suspects were arrested shortly after the murder and charged with a felony murder, unlawful imprisonment. Tom, good evening to you, buddy. Thank you for being here. Good to see you. Evidence presented. At the trial, Linda Murray has testified against the men. Interrogation footage of Fernandez and DNA evidence linking the suspects to the crime have been presented. Your door is always locked. That's good. You know, somebody's in a safe area. It's like, I don't know, like some places, anything happen anywhere. Now, when I was in Kentucky, no doors were locked. And I just would, when I was up there, I just did it anyway. Because I just feel it's the best way to go. But there'll be times where doors aren't even locked. It's like, I understand, but say like a bear can just open it up and walk in, or a Timu raccoon, or a Timu gnome, could just come in unexpectedly. The DTE trial in diabetes. I think I read that right. While the murder trial is the most prominent story, the DTE trial can also refer to certain medical research studies. One study listed clinical trials as investigating the effectiveness of desiccated thyroid extract. I don't think that is what we're doing, but I'll read it anyway. In treating hypothermism, however, this is a separate topic from the criminal trial. Oh, that was just some fun fact for y'all. Okay, that was a fun fact. Okay. In the motives of the attack. Something I did not read to you all yet. The motive of the attack on Hussein Murray was planned robbery targeting his jewelry and pawn shop business. Prosecutors alleged that the home invasion was premeditated and not random act based on evidence that one suspects in his prior knowledge of Murray's business. It used to be like that here. The doors were always open. It was Ireland. Okay. Yeah. But a lot of different circumstances happen, and then things change, where you have to lock all the doors. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your thoughts about this, Tons. Anna said, "But gas leaks don't wait for sunup." Scared. Yeah, there you go. Right, evidence or planned robbery. Targeted attack. Assistant Prosecutor John Piat-Fessera. Oh, it's Hussein. Yeah, I know. I should know what Hussein is because of Saddam Hussein. I just thought it looked too similar to that word, but I thought it was a separate spelling. But thank you for our pronunciation. Yeah, Hussein. Yeah, I should know that. All right. Targeted attack. Assistant prosecutor stated the attack was targeted and it was very well planned. It was not random coincidence. Targeting the jewelry business. Oakland County Sheriff Mike Butchard initially voiced the intuition that the attack was related to the Murray's business, a type of enterprise that is sometimes targeted for the cash and valuables. Prosecutors have since confirmed this theory. Prior visits to Murray's shop. During the opening statements, the prosecution replied that defendants Carlos Hernandez had been Murray's hand-marked jewelry pawn shop a year before the murder and returned to February 24. During his last visit, he asked to meet with the owner, Hussein Murray. Demands for valuables. After the allegedly assaulting Hussein Murray in the basement, defendants Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo reportedly asked his wife Linda where the money and jewelry were kept. Theft of belongings. Following the attack, Linda Murray testified that the suspect stole her watch, keys, and phone. Jewelry boxes and costume jewelry belonging to her were later found in Hernandez's possession. All right. Now, that is some explanation. And in this trial, Anna, there is a two. In this trial, there is two juries, Anna. So it's not just one, but two. And the reason for this is the two juries in the DTE imposter murder trial are in place to address the conflicting defense of the co-defendants Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo, while still allowing for the single joint trial. This unusual procedure promotes judicial efficiency by allowing witnesses to testify only once while protecting each defendant's constitutional right in a fair trial. All right, legal issues, conflicting defenses. Confessions or statements. The need for a dual juries often arise when one defendant's out of court statement or confession implicates a co-defendant. This type of statement is typically ad symbol against the person who made it, but is considered hearsay. It is admissible against the other defendants. The Sixth Amendment violation. If a single jury were to hear such a statement, it would violate the co-defendant's Sixth Amendment right to confront the witnesses against them, even if a judge instructs the jury to ignore the statements. When considering the co-defendant's case, the involvement could still prejudice the jury's decision. And this is how it works. The two jury system works. And I appreciate you all staying up, and yeah, shout out to Chocolate. Chocolate's very good. Joint presentation. The joint trial allows prosecution to present common evidence such as testimony from Linda Murray, DNA evidence in a DTE impersonation scheme, to both juries at the same time. Separate consideration. However, when evidence that is specific to only one defendant is introduced, such a statement, confession, I think that Chocolate, that's really, I see, personally, I need Chocolate at that time. You know, it is very, Chocolate can certainly be enchanting. That's something we could all agree on. And that is like what I do personally. Like, I'll be doing, because I have like an alien chocolate factory personally, and I would do that as well. And especially at night, it would be a good, in my opinion, a nice little sweet treat. You know, just think of it, think of it this way, like a midnight snack. So, you know, shout out to the late night snackers, such as statements or confession. Now, dark chocolate is something that Liberty and I were talking about. That dark chocolate is very good. Also, all right. such as statements or confession. The defendant's jury is removed from the courtroom. This ensures that each jury only hears evidence that is admissible for the specific defendant they are considering. Conflicting strategies. This setup is particularly important to the trial due to the different defense strategies of Hernandez and Zuazo. Hernandez's attorney has conceded that the client was involved in the home invasion, but denies he participated in the murder. Zuazo's attorney, on the other hand, maintains that his client was wrongfully identified and was not even present to the scene. Okay, tons understood, and you do what is best for you, and everybody can. Oh, everybody has their own different types of schedules. Everybody has their own different types of diets, and what works for one person may not work for another. So understood, tons. In your cabin on the spaceship, we will not be giving you any chocolates at night. I will have them for myself and the others that want them. And right, guys, I'm bowing out. 6 a.m. comes fast. See you all later. Stay safe. All right, Becky. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight, and thank you for coming. Take care. Like I said, people can eat chocolate at night if they want to, and they shouldn't be judged or told otherwise about it. All right. And Doe says, "Hey, alien spaceship," in chat. Oh, hello, Doe. Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Right, and Zuazo's attorney, on the other hand, maintains that his client was wrongfully identified. It was not even present at the scene. By using two juries, the court can manage the conflicting defenses and different sets of evidence that each jury is allowed to hear. This avoids the need for two completely separate trials, saving court resources and witness time. Managing trial with two juries present, several complex logistical challenges for the court attorneys, and jurors requiring precise coordination to protect each defendant's right to a fair trial. Courtroom setup management. Physical arrangement. The courtroom must be arranged to accommodate two distinctive jury boxes. For example, the Menendez trial, one jury sat in the traditional jury box, while the other sat in rows of chairs placed in front of it. The setup must also allow for the Okay, Joyce. Good night to you. Thank you for hanging out with us. Courtroom setup management. The physical arrangement. The courtroom must be arranged to accommodate two distinct jury boxes. For example, the Menendez trial, one jury sat in traditional jury box while the other sat in rows of chairs placed in front of it. The setup must also allow the selective exclusion of one jury without disrupting the other. Jury shuffling. The jury's bailiffs and attorneys must meticulously coordinate the entry and exit of the juries. The judge must be vigilant to ensure that the wrong jury does not hear admissible testimony. Any mistake could lead to mistrial, as Judge Ronald S. Cohen once said, calling to the process a pain in the neck. Testimony. The evidence revealed in both defense can present simultaneously. When the evidence is admissible only against one defendant, such as a confession, the other jury must be excused from the courtroom. This means a witness may have to pause and restart their testimony or present evidence in the way that accommodates both juries. In Washington State case where they Latin print examiner used as the overhead projector to present evidence to both juries at once. All right. Communication and instruction. The jury communication managing two separate groups of juries required. Okay, so the communication instructions. So the two juries require communication managing two separate groups of jurors required clear communication. The court must provide instructions and scheduling updates to both juries, often with one jury wanting outside the courtroom for long periods while other hear specific testimony. Instructions. Complexity. The judge must deliver distinct jury instructions and ensure that each jury understands which evidence they cannot consider. This can be complex, and there is always a risk that a jury may inadvertently consider excluded information. The opening and closing statements. To maintain a clear separation and agreement, prosecution often gives separate opening statements and agreement to each jury. Potential for error and appeals. Mistrial risk. The risk of a mistrial is significantly higher in a dual jury trial if a piece of evidence that is only admissible against one defendant is accidentally mentioned while both juries are present. The judge might be forced to declare a mistrial for one or both defendants. Appellate scrutiny. The use of two juries often face close scrutiny on appeal, as appellate courts have sometimes expressed reservations about the procedure despite upholding the convictions in certain cases. The entire process must be meticulously documented to show that all constitutional rights were protected. Fairness and jury comprehension. The jury experience the constant in and out of courtroom can distribute the jurors' flow, understanding the effect of overall experiences. Some lawyers have argued that these gaps in testimony can be subtly disadvantageous to the client. deliberations while both juries hear overlapping evidence. Their deliberations are conducted separately. All right. While both juries hear overlapping evidence, their deliberations are conducted separately and isolated from one another. This can lead to differing outcomes, as seen in Menendez brothers' first trial. Deadlock juries resulted in mistrial. What safeguard prevents a jury from being prejudiced by another? Oh, okay. Thank you, Anna, for that information. Yeah, she says, saw a picture earlier scrolling on this lawyer with long black hair was Michigan school shooter lawyer. Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Now, and the trial is an ongoing trial, and we will be seeing how, it all goes over time. Or what safeguards prevent this? Soon I'll be reading a story, like a Halloween type story. The court uses a number of specific safeguards to prevent one jury from being prejudiced by the other in a dual jury trial. These measures include carefully structuring the person of evidence and providing precise jury instructions, physically separating the juries when necessary, the using communication protocols to ensure each jury hears only relevant and assemblable testimony for the defendant it is assigned to. Admissible evidence. The judge and the attorneys carefully manage the presentation of evidence that is only admissible against one defendant in a dual jury trial. The most often involves out of court statements such as a confession and might implicate a co-defendant. All right. So, all right, continuing. Jury removal. When such evidence is presented, the jury for non-implicated defendant is removed from the courtroom so they do not hear testimony. This is the most crucial safeguard to prevent contamination of the second jury. This is the most critical safeguard present contamination of the second jury. Right? And it says, okay, though, been sick a lot lately, but hang and hope you've been well. I was just thinking about you today. Oh, that's very sweet. Sequencing of testimony. Attorneys and court must plan sequence of witnesses and the evidence to minimize distributions caused by moving juries and out of the courtroom. Jury instructions. Clear instructions. Judges provide jurors with very clear and explicit instructions both at the start of the trial and during the final charge of the jury. Focus on the evidence and presented to them. The dual jury trial, These instructions emphasize that the jurors must not consider any testimony or evidence that occurred while they were outside the courtroom. Avoid assumptions. Instructions also remind jurors that not to draw any inferences from the removal of the other jury. Jurors are told that the trial is continuing in their absence and that their only job is to consider the evidence they heard. All right, Doe says, sorry you had been sick. I had something 2 times since August. Just thought it was allergies, but nah, getting better now as well. It's a pain for 2 juries because one's always going to be sent out. Yeah, and today that happened. They sent out another jury today. Yeah. Physical communication and safeguards. The separate deliberation, the 2 juries are kept completely separate from one another and deliberate in private. Jurors from one jury have no contact with other jurors from the other. Setting arrangement. The physical layout of the courtroom is often adjusted to provide separate jury boxes or seating areas for each jury to prevent an accidental communication or visual cues. No inter-jury discussion. The jurors in a dual jury trial are typically reminded to follow standard protocols that fabricate them from discussing the case with anyone, including other jurors, until formal deliberations begin. This instruction is even more critical to prevent jurors from one panel from discussing the case with another. All right, seating arrangements. So, physical layout of the courtroom is often adjusted to provide separate. Okay, no inter-jury discussions. Jurors in a dual jury trial. All right. Remind me, follow standard protocols. No inter-jury discussions. Jurors dual jury trial are typically reminded to follow standard protocols that forbid them from discussing the case, anyone including other jurors. Formal deliberations and instructions even more critical to prevent discussing case with one another. Okay. All right, and also, chat, we're going to be. Okay, whiskey cloves. All right. The Burton Rule. The legal foundation for the dual jury procedure is based on the 1968 U.S. Supreme Court case Burton versus the United States. Burton Rule determined that the defense Sixth Amendment right to confront witnesses to violate when co-defendant's confession, which also implicates that the defendant is admitted to evidence in a joint trial. The court found that even if a judge instructs a single jury to ignore the confession against the implicated defendant, the risk of prejudice is too great. The dual juries provide a remedy for this by ensuring that implicated defendant's jury hears the confession while the other defendant's jury does not. Now, what other situations is Twine? Anna says, Alien, are you watching it on Trial TV? I'm watching it on Detroit Fox 2, not Trial TV. While out of control confessions are the most common reasons for the dual juries, the other situations involving antagonistic defenses or complex evidence can also lead to their use. The core purpose remains the same: to protect each defendant's constitutional rights to a fair trial while preserving judicial efficiency through a joint proceeding. Antagonistic defenses. Dual juries are often used when co-defendants have antagonistic or irreconcilable defenses. A defense is considered antagonistic when a jury cannot accept one defendant's defense without simultaneously disbelieving the other. The other scenario is currently playing out in DTE Imposter Trial. Carlos Hernandez's defense. His attorney admits Hernandez was present during the home invasion but denies he participated in the fatal beating. Joshua Suazo's defense. His attorney argues that Suazo misidentified it was not present at the scene at all. For a single jury, hearing the admission from one defendant would likely produce other defendant. Even when limiting instructions, separate juries allow each panel to focus on specific evidence and agreements relevant to their defendant. Prejudicial other acts evidence. In some cases, prosecution may seek to omit the evidence of a prior bad act by one defendant which is indismissible against the co-defendant. Examples: prosecution might want to introduce evidence of a previous similar robbery committed by one defendant to establish a pattern, but this information would unfairly prejudice the other defendant who had no part in the prior crime. A dual trial allows the jury assigned the defendant with a prior act to hear the evidence while other jury is removed. All right. Witness-related issues. The dual juries also can be used to protect witnesses, especially in a sensitive case such as the sexual battery or child abuse. In a joint trial, a key witness might need to testify about a traumatic event. The benefit of a dual juries with two juries: the witness only has to testify once. This avoids the trauma and difficulty of requiring the witness to testify in two separate trials, reducing the chance that the witness will become unavailable or unable to provide testimony. Okay, tons. Understood. And I want you to, of course, respect the chat when you are here, and whatever they're doing, they to respect what they are doing, how they're doing things. So, okay, understood, tons. And Regina says, "Yo, Hans, dude. Oh, Regina, good to see you. Welcome to the stream. We're talking about a very peculiar case where there's two people that did a robbery, and they're both being tried at the same time, and there's two different juries that are doing this, and so there's two juries at the same time doing this trial, and these two guys went and robbed this couple in their broke in because they had a pawn shop and they wanted to steal their stuff, and they murdered the husband, and they after doing that they went and took her stuff and hit her and was abusive. So they're both on trial right now, and a separate channel is covering it, not the usual channels that we look at. Good to see you, Regina. I hope that you're doing well. Thank you for being here. All right, so that is about this trial that we're watching today. And I am going to, since it's Halloween season, I'm going to talk about another spooky story. All right. All right, so this is a scary story for the, Halloween season. We'll begin. All right, this is called the Murders in the Rue Morgue. Now, see if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Going here, this way. Rue. Okay, I said it right. Paris. In Paris, it was in the summer of 1840. There I first meet the strange, interesting young fellow, the Auguste Dupin. Dupin was the last member of a well-known family, a family which had once been rich and famous. He himself, however, was far from rich. He cared little about money, and he had enough to buy most of the necessary things of life and a few books. He did not trouble himself about the rest, just books. With the books, he was happy. We first met when we were both trying to find the same book, as few had ever heard of this chance brought us then again another bookstore, so we began to talk. I was deeply interested in the family history. He told me. I was surprised to how much widely he had read. More importantly, the force of his busy mind was like a bright light in my soul. I felt that friendship of such a man would be for riches without a price. I therefore told him of my feelings toward him, and he agreed to. Come and live with me, he would have, I thought, the joy of using many fine books, and I would have the pleasure of having someone with me, for I was not happy alone. We passed the day reading, writing, and talking, but Dupin was a lover of a night at night, often with only the light of the stars to show us the way. We walked the streets of Paris, sometimes talking, sometimes quiet. I always thinking. I soon noticed a special reasoning power, he had an unusual reasoning power. Using it gave him great pleasure. He told me once, with a soft and quiet laugh, that most men have windows over their hearts. Through these he could see into their souls. Then he surprised me by telling what he knew about my soul, and I found that he knew things about me that I had thought only could be possible known in his manner. At these moments he could and distant, cold and distant, his eyes looked empty, and far away his voice became huge and nervous, such as the times seemed to me that I saw just Dupin, but two Dupins could only coldly put things together, and another who just coldly took them apart. One night, we were walking down one of Paris's long and dirty streets. Both of us were busy with our thoughts. Neither had spoken for perhaps 15 minutes. It seems if we had each forgotten the other was there. Yeah, Lori, scared? I soon took that Dupin had not forgotten me, however. Suddenly he said, "You're right. He is very little fellow that's true and would be more successful if he acted in lighter, less serious plays. Yes, there can be no doubt of that." I said at first I saw nothing strange in this. Dupin had agreed with me, with my own thoughts. This, of course, seemed to me a quiet nature. Natural for a few seconds, I continued walking and thinking, but suddenly I realized that Dupin had agreed with something which was only a thought. I had not spoken a single word. I stopped walking, turned to my friend Dupin. I said, "Dupin, this is beyond my understanding. How can you know that I was thinking of?" Here I stopped in the order to test him, to learn if he really did know my unspoken thoughts. "How did I know you were thinking of Chanity? Why do you stop? You were thinking that Chanity too small for the plays in which he acts." "That is indeed what I was thinking, but tell me, heaven's name, the method of, if method is there, by which you have been able to see my soul in this matter." "It was the fruit seller. Fruit seller, I know no fruit seller. I mean the man who ran into you as we entered the street. It may have been 10 or 15 minutes ago, perhaps less. Yes, that's true. I remember now, a fruit seller carrying a large basket of apples on his head almost threw me down, but I don't understand why the fruit seller should make me think of Chanty. Chantilly. Or if he did, however, you can know that I explain. Listen closely now. Let us follow your thoughts from the fruit seller to the play actor, Chantilly. Those thoughts must have gone like this: from the fruit seller to the cobblestone ceremony, and from the ceremony of Epicurus, Orion, and the Chantilly. As we turned into the street, fruit seller walking very quickly past us, ran against you and made you step on some cobblestones. Cobblestone can be pretty slippery, by the way, which had not been put down eventually. I could see the stones had hurt your foot. You spoke of a few angry words to yourself, continued walking, but you kept looking down at the cobblestone in the street, so I knew you were still thinking of stones. Then we came to a small street where they are putting down the street stones, which they have cut a new and very special way. Here your face becomes brighter. I see Your lips move. I could not doubt that you were saying the word stereotomy. The name is the way of cutting stones. It is a strange word, isn't it? But you will remember that we read about this in a newspaper only yesterday. I thought that the word stereotomy must make you think that the old Greek writer named Epicurus, who wrote something called the atoms, he believed that the world and everything in heavens above are made of these atoms. Not long ago, you and I were talking about Epicurus and his ideas. His atoms idea with Epicurus wrote about more than 2,000 years ago. We were talking about how much these old ideas, like today's ideas on Earth, the stars in the sky, I felt sure that you would look to the sky. You did look up now. I was certain of that. Okay, let's see here. Interestingly, Orion is a star that I like to look at and I've been frequently been observing because in this season, around the fall, it's when it comes out. In my area. I had been following you through your thoughts and had come into your mind. I too looked up and saw the group of stars we call Orion is very bright and clear tonight. I knew that you would notice this. Think about the name Orion. Now follow my thoughts carefully. Only yesterday, in the newspaper, there were articles about actor Chantley, an article which was not friendly, and Chantilly not friendly at all. We noticed that the right article had used some words taken in the book he had read. His words about Orion, so I knew you would put together the ideas of Orion and Chantilly. I saw you smile, remembering that the article and the hard words in it. Then I saw you standing straighter as rail as you could make yourself. I was sure you were thinking Chantilly size, especially his height. He is a small, he is short, and so I spoke, saying that he is indeed a very little fellow. This Chantilly, and he would be more successful. He acted in a lighter, less serious plays. I will not say that I was surprised. I was more than surprised. I was astonished. Dupin was right as he could be. Those were in fact thoughts, my unspoken thoughts, as my mind moved from one thought to the next. But if I was astonished by this, I would soon be more astonished. One morning, this strangely interesting man showed me once again his unusual reasoning power. He heard that an old woman had been killed by an unknown person. The deletion killers cut her head off. They escaped into the night. Who was this killer, this murderer? The police had no answer. They had looked everywhere, found nothing, and helped them. They did not know what to do next, and so they did nothing, but not Dupin. He knew what to do. Alright, so part two. It was Paris in the summer of 1840 that I met Auguste Dupin. He was usually interested in a young man with a busy, forceful mind. This mind could, it seemed, look right through the man's body, into his soul, and uncover his deepest thoughts. Sometimes he seemed to be not one but two people, one who coldly put things together, another who just coldly took them apart. One morning in the heat of the summer, Dupin showed me once again his special reasoning power. We read in a newspaper about a terrible deletion killing, an old woman and her daughter living alone in an old house in the Rue Morgue, and been deleted in the middle of the night. Wrong thing. I accidentally switched the page over by mistake. Okay, let's go. All right, Paris, July 7, 1840. In the early morning today, the people in the western part of the city are awakened by their sleep by cries of terror which come, it seemed, from a house in the street called the Rue Morgue. The only person living in the house was old woman Miss Miss L and her daughter, several neighbors. It's S. Bonneray, daughter, several neighbors, and the policeman ran toward the house. And at the time they reached the cries and had stopped when no one answered their calls, they forced the door open. As they rushed, they heard voices, and two voices. They seemed to come from above. The group hurried from the room to room, but they found nothing until they reached the fourth floor. They found a door that was firmly closed and locked. With a key inside, quickly they forced the door open, and they saw spread before a bloody, sickening scene, a scene of horror. The room was the wildest possible order. Broken chairs and tables were lying all around the room. There was only one bed. From it, everything had been taken and thrown into the middle of the floor. There was blood everywhere, on the floor and on the bed, on the walls, and a sharp knife covered with blood was lying on the floor in front of the fireplace. There was some long gray hair, also bloody it seemed to have been pulled from the human head. On the floor were four pieces of gold and earring, several objects made of silver, and two bags containing the large amount of money and gold. Clothes had been shown around the room. A box was found under the bed covers. It was open and held only a few old letters and papers. Yeah, Anna, scared. There was no one there, so it seemed. Above the fireplace, they found the deleted dead body of the daughter. It had been put up to the opening where the smoke escapes the sky. The body was still warm. There was blood on the face. On the neck there was dark, deep marks, which seemed to have been made by strong fingers. These marks surely show how daughter was deleted killed. After hunting in every part of the house without finding anything, more of the group went outside behind the building. They found the body of the old woman. Her neck was almost cut through, and when they tried to lift her up, her head fell off. Scared. The next day, the newspaper offered to its reader these new facts. The murders of the Rue Morgue, Paris, July 8, 1840. The police have talked with many people about the terrible deletion killing in the old house, the Rue Morgue, but nothing had been learned to answer the question of who their killers were. Pauline Dunborg. A washwoman says that she knew about both of the deleted dead women from more than 3 years and has washed their clothes. That right there will ruin your day. Yeah, yeah, I know, right? Yeah, definitely. And Pierre Moreau, a Shakespeare says, a not Shakespeare, a shopkeeper says Miss L had been brought food at his shop for nearly 4 years, and she owned the house and had lived in more than 6 years. People said they had money. He never saw anyone enter the door except the old lady and her daughter, and a doctor 8 to 10 times, perhaps. Many other persons. Neighbors said that the same things. Almost no one ever went into the house. Ah, why can I type? My phone is shaking its head. Hilarious. Hilarious. It's a haunted phone. Scared. Many other persons, neighbors, said that the same thing. Almost no one ever went into the house, and Miss L and her daughter were not often seen. Jules Miguad, a banker, says that Miss L had put money in his bank beginning 8 years before, 3 days before her death. She took out the bank and a large amount of money and gold, and a man from the bank carried it for her house. Now, because this story takes place in France, and there's a murder that occurs, and we know from the other stories and other murders that we do that it's a regular day, but then they find a murder and they find a body. So, and it certainly is a mystery story. It's based in the 1800s in France, and I think personally, like seeing somebody, in that situation would be quite a frightening thing. And this reminds me a lot of Jack the Ripper, although it's take place in Paris. It could have been based off Jack the Ripper. That's what it reminds you of. It certainly would be scary to a town of people that are, dealing with something like this. It doesn't have the technology and internet that they had back then. We have now, but they were more closer together in dealing with these things. It wasn't as spread out. Jules and Migard, a banker, okay, I read that. Okay, and Isidore Muist, a policeman, says that he was with the group that first entered the house. While he was going up the stairs, he had heard two voices, low and soft, and one hard, high, and very strange. The voice of someone who was certainly not French, a voice of a foreigner, Spanish perhaps. It was not a woman's voice. He could not understand what it said, but the low voice, the softer voice, said French, my God. Alfonso Garcia, who is a Spanish and lives in Rue Morgue, says he entered the house but did not go into the stairs, and he was afraid he might be ill. He heard the voices. He believes the high voices was not that a Frenchman, perhaps it was English, but doesn't understand English, is not sure. William Byrd, another foreigner, an Englishman, says he was one of the persons who entered the house. He has lived in Paris for 2 years. He heard the voices. The low voices was that the Frenchman, he was sure, because he heard it say the French, may God. The high voice was very loud, and he is sure that it was not the voice of an Englishman, nor the voice of a Frenchman, and he seems to be an Italian. He must have been a woman's voice. Hey, he does not understand Italian. Mr. Alberto Montasni, an Italian, was passing the house at the time of the cries. He says they lasted about 2 minutes. They were screams, a long and loud, terrible and fearful sounds. Montani, who speaks Spanish but not French, says he also heard two voices. He thought both voices were French, but he could not understand any of the words spoken. The persons who first entered the house all agree that the door of the room where the daughter's body was found was locked in the inside. When they reached the door, everything was quiet. When they forced the door open, they saw no one. The windows were closed and firmly locked inside. There are two steps, and someone could have gone down while they were going up. They say the openings of the fireplace are too small for anyone to have escaped through them. It took 4 to 5 people to pull a daughter's body out of the opening over the fireplace. A careful search was made through the whole house. It was 4 or 5 minutes from the time they heard voices to the moment they forced open the door to the room. Paul O'Donnell's doctor says that he was called to see the bodies soon after they were found. They were horrible condition, badly marked and broken. Such results could have come from a woman's hand, only from those of a very powerful man. The daughter had been deleted, killed by the strong hands around the neck. The police had learned nothing more than this. A deletion killing, as strange as has never been before, happened. The police do not know where to begin and look for answers. When we first finished reading the newspaper's accounts, the murders, neither Dupin nor myself said anything for a while, but I could see in his eyes that could empty look which told me that the mind was working busily. When he asked me about, I thought all of this could only agree with Paris. I told him that I considered a very difficult problem, a miscry in which possible answer was no. Dupin, no, I think you are wrong. The miscry is yes, but those must be an answer. Let us go to the house and see what we can see. There must be an answer. There must. All right. Murders of the Rue Morgue, Part 3. It was in Paris that I met Auguste Dupin. He was an unusually interesting young man with a busy, forceful mind. This mind could seem to look right through a man's body into the deepest soul. One of the summer morning, we read at the newspapers about a terrible deletion killing. The deleted person were an old woman and her unmarried daughter who lived alone in the fourth floor of the old house in the street called Rue Morgue. Someone had taken the daughter's neck in powerful fingers and pressed the fearful strength into the life. Mara's body was found outside the building house with the head nearly cut off. The knife which was she used to delete and kill was found. However, the room on the floor, several neighbors ran to the house when heard women's cries of fear. As they ran up the fourth floor, the two other voices, but when they reached a room and broke down the door, they found no living person, room like door of two. Windows were firmly closed, locked on the inside. There was no other way that the deletion killer could have gotten into the room. Paris police did not know where to begin to look for the answer. I told Dupin that it seemed to me that there was no impossible to learn the answer of the mystery of these deletion killings. No one said, Dupin, no, I think that you are wrong. Mystery must be the answer. We must not judge what possibly just what to have read in newspapers. The Paris police work hard and often good results, but there was no real method in which they do when something more simple, hard work is needed. When a little real method is needed, the police fail. Sometimes they stand to near problems. Often, if a person looks for something very closely, he can see a few things more clearly. The shape of the whole thing escapes him. There must be an answer. There must be. Let us go to the house and see what we can see. I know the head of the police, and he will allow us to do so, and this will be interesting and give at some pleasure. I thought it's strange that Dupin should believe he would get pleasure out of this, but I said nothing. It was late in the afternoon when we reached the house on the Rue Morveau. It was casually found that there were still many persons. In fact, the crowd standing there looking at it before going and walked all around it. Dupin carefully looked in a neighborhood house as well as this one. I could not understand the reason for such a great care. We came again in front of the house, and we went in, and we went up the stairs into the room where the daughter's body had been found. Both bodies were there. The police had left the room, so they had found it. I saw nothing beyond what the newspaper had. As Dupin looked with great care at everything, at the bodies, the walls, fireplace, and the window, then we went home. Said nothing. I could see the cold look in his eyes, which told me that that his mind was working busily and quickly. I asked no questions. Dupin said nothing until the next morning, when he came into my room and asked me suddenly if I had not noticed something especially strange what we saw in the house Rue Morgue. I replied nothing more. Then both read the newspapers. Okay. Okay, going here for a moment. Let's see. All right, so here we go, continuing. Tell me, my friend, how shall we explain the horrible force, that unusual strength used in these murders, and those who were voices that were heard? No one was except the deleted dead woman, yet there was no way for anyone to escape. And while conditions of the room, a body was found in the head during the above fireplace. The terrible broken appearances of the body and the old lady with its head cut off, these are all far from what might be expected. To the police are standing, and they do not know where to begin. These things are unusual indeed, but they are not indeed mysteries. We should not ask what has happened, but what has happened that has never happened before. In fact, the very thing the police think cannot possibly be explained, the things which will lead me to answer. Indeed, I believe that they had already led me to the answer. I was surprised that I could not say a word. Dupin looked quickly at the door. I am not waiting for a person who will know something about these murders. These wild deletion killings, I do not think he had them himself, but I think he will know that the deletion killer. I hope I am right about this. If I am, then the expect to find a whole answer today. I expected the man here. It is his room. Any movement, it is truly he may come, but he probably will. But he and the person who did this, he will find him. I tell you, while we wait for this man to know, for I have never met him. While I wait, I will tell you how I thoughts went. Dupin began to talk, but it did not seem that he was trying to explain to me what he had thought. It seemed that he was talking to himself. He looked not at me, but the wall. It has been fully proven that the voices heard by the neighbors were not the voices of the woman who were deleted killed. Someone else was in the room, therefore certain that the old woman did not know the first kill and her daughter, then to delete herself. Some would not have been strong enough to put her daughter's body where it was found, and the manner of the old lady's death showed that she could not have caused it herself. A person can delete kill himself with a knife, yes, but he surely cannot cut his own head almost off, then drop a knife in the floor and jump out of the window. It was murder, then done some third person to person, and those voices were the voices of these. Right? And you see there these detectives are trying to figure out what the murder is and in their investigation. So these things that we did and we see in the trials and stuff is similar things like what they did in these old times. And nowadays we have much better technology than they did back in those times. They didn't have the technology as good. All right, so and that is we'll be continuing with the stream, and we will continue this part tomorrow. We're gonna still be doing the stream. We're not ending it for tonight, but we will continue more the next time with that. All right. So now what we're going to do is I had this idea about, and we talk about different paintings and art stuff. So I'm going to look into some of these paintings that are known to be kind of these scary paintings for the Halloween season. All right. Now, numerous famous paintings throughout art history have been created with intention of dis- disturbing and unsettling viewers, from depictions of mythological horror to physical realism. These iconic artworks have endured for the ability to invoke feelings of fear, anxiety, and dread. Saturn devouring his son by the Francisco Goe. About the painting, the part of Goe's dark black painting series 1819 to 1823 is the mural-like work portrays of the Roman god Saturn in state of crazed frenzy, eating one of his children's to prevent prophecy from being overthrown. We see this mythology in a lot of different shows and stories and stuff like that. Yeah, that and certainly this that is certainly a frightening painting, and why it's scary. The horrifying subject matter of Guy's brutal, messy brushstrokes capture the primal grotesque act. This frantic expression, Saturn's eyes, and the blood-stained of half-even corpse is a physical representation of insanity and destructive power. Okay, and showing what this painting is right there, right this way. I've seen this in memes before and stuff. I never knew what the painting was called. Yeah, it's kind of graphic right here. It's a person eating the young person. And yeah, I've seen that in profile pictures and memes before. All right, and Nightmare by Henry Fuseli. About the painting. Created in 1781, this Gothic artwork depicts the sleeping woman with a demonic incubus figure crouched on her chest. A horse with growing eyes burst through the curtains in the background. Why it's scary. The painting visualizes the feelings of nightmare, sleep paralysis, and the oppressive, suffocating atmosphere and lurking monstrous figures and into the deep primal fears of vulnerability during sleep. Yeah, hilarious story. Yeah, this is a famous one. Okay, so this has to do with sleep paralysis and night terrors right here. All right, so this is you see it's a woman that is having the night terrors where a lot of times in sleep paralysis a person can't always like wake up, like they can't really move. So this is a depiction of the horse, kind of like it's a crazy looking horse. It's just kind of like glaring. It's like it's on crack, and then the demon thing's just sitting on top of the woman. So yeah, that is one that has to do with night terrors. It's an old depiction of like a someone like has a curtain for a bed around their bed, and these things come in. So that is like the symbolism behind that. Okay. The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. About the painting. The large tri triptych 1490 to 1510 is a surreal vision of the world depicting a Garden of Eden, garden of earthly pleasures, and a chaotic nightmarish hellscape. Why is this scary? The terrifying final panel, Hell, is a vast, disturbing collection of bizarre images, Bosch's grotesque hybrid creatures, and fanatical punishments. Unsettling scenes of torture create a surreal and very profound, unsettling betrayal of the eternity of damnation. Alright, so look at this one right here. Yeah, we talked about this one before. It kind of shows like heaven and hell. it shows these different depictions of it. It's like this real trippy place. About the painting. Painted in 1850, this academic work shows a scene from Dante's Inferno where the poet is described as damned and savagely biting another, the eighth circle of hell. Why is it scary? The painting, highly realistic detail, makes the vicious muscular struggle between the two tormented figures intensely unnerving. The classical precision is used to amplify the raw brutality of the scene. And this scene, it's like a person, like a vampire biting another man, and you have these two, you have like a demon, like a Caesar, and you have like a other person kind of watching, and then you have this satanic thing that's like a smiling, laughing crackhead with wings, and he's just watching it like he's getting turned on by it or something. He's just scared. All right, Lori says, when I was 7, I woke up in the morning and my legs wouldn't work. Wore off pretty fast, but freaked me out. Happened to me. Has happened to me before. Yeah. And with the... I remember the other day I was like, yeah, I've had night terrors, and I've had nightmares before where I was... I've had like dreams of these things, but then I kind of do lucid dreaming and fight against it. The other day when I was like resting with the cat, with Bubbles, I couldn't really like get up, but then it started to wear off and can get up again. I was scared. But yes, I understand what you mean. Yeah. And yeah, that's the painting right there. It looks like a vampire male, and then some other guy. They're both nude, getting eaten, drinking the blood. And the two other people are watching in the background. They're just kind of just chilling. It's really kind of like a funny look. It's kind of a funny scene in a way. Yeah, and everybody's just like bystanders, and it's just like chat just watching. All right, the screen by Endevard Munch about the painting created in 1893. The scream is versatile depiction of a human despair. It shows a figure with a skull-like face, wide, dark eyes, holding their head, while fiery, distorted landscape twisted around them. Why it's scary. The painting captures a raw emotion of existential anxiety and terror. The figure's silent, psychic cry, oppressive fury, colors make it a powerful, iconic symbol of the human suffering. All right, let's look at that one. Lori said Alien has a wee dark streak. Scared. There you go. Yeah, I have a little a dark Timu streak in me that seems like it surfaces from the abyss of my mind from time to time. Scared. Right. So this one's very famous. All right, this is the scream. I didn't know what it was called or anything about it, but I've seen this in memes. I've seen this in cartoons. I've seen this everywhere. It kind of reminds me of Van Gogh a little bit, and the person is screaming by their water, and there's like some people in the background just chilling, and then there's this person, like this Voldemort-looking character is like looks like he's observing aliens' dark streak. You know, you can never underestimate my Timu tendencies. Right. And then you have that right there, and yeah, the eyes are very protruding, and the mouth, and it almost looks like an alien. It looks like an extraterrestrial that lost its spaceship in the river, and he's seeing that Earthlings are staring at him. That Earthlings are staring at him, and he's scared. Yeah, so that's it, and everybody's looking at where it's at exactly. They're trying to like see where it's at, and then a little critter is screaming, a little gray alien screaming, scared. Severed Heads by Theodore Grusacult. About the painting. In this early 19th century study, the Grusacult describes a gruesome scene of decapitated heads. His inflicting realism brings the brutal consequences of violence vividly to life. Why it's scary. The paintings detailed the clinical rendering of dismembered body parts, both horrifying and thought provoking, forcing the viewer to confront the brutal conflict. Okay, let's see. Not what I meant to do. Alright, we reviewed that one already. That was okay. Judith beheading the Hoferness and Caravaggio. About the painting. From the early 17th century, this painting depicts a biblical heroine, usually from the Catholic Bible. The King James Bible, I don't think has it. Heroine Judith and her maidservant in the process of gruesomely beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes. Why it's scary. Caravaggio's mastery of dramatic lighting. As we talked about before, chiaroscuro and visceral realism brings the bloody act to life. The expressions of resolve, horror, and pain to make the gruesome act disturbingly real. Alright, going to show that right here. Yeah, it's graphic of the beheading. That's Judith beheading the general right there. Scared. All right. The Gross Clinic by Thomas Eakins. About the painting. This is an 1875 painting, shows Dr. Samuel D. Gross performing surgery in the lecture theater. Why it's scary. At the time of its creation, the uninflicting body realism, considered a shocking, vivid depiction of exposed tissue and the raw nature of the surgical procedure, subverting the era's taste and romanticize art. All right, here, this way. All right, this is interesting. All these people watching this clinic are quite different how they did things back then than they do now, because everything's all would be in a hospital, all sanitation and things like that. And yeah, I think that is a wild scene, a wild scene how things were back in the past, and it shows you like the history. And Doe says, "Hey Anna, are you still here?" She's probably lurking in the background. Reportedly haunted paintings. The Hands Resist Him by Bill Stoneham. About the painting. This 1972 painting depicts a boy and a creepy doll standing before a glass paneled door in the gained notoriety of the early 2000s when a couple posted it for sale on eBay with a warning that it was haunted. Why it's scary. A creepypasta about painting claims that the figures move at night and are responsible for causing a series of mishaps for its owners. Scared. You're welcome, Lori. Glad you enjoyed the stream. Okay, and going this right here. All right, this is the painting right here that is speaking of. That is one of the paintings that we're referring to. And all right, the crying boy of Bargalone. About the painting, a series of processed prints of a boy with tears on his face became famous in 1980s. Why it's scary. The prints were sensationally linked to a series of house fires in the UK, where it was reported that the only prince survived the blazes unscathed. The legend to mass public burnings of the prince. And Doe, how are you doing with everything with you? Is curious. Where I am, it's still warm. It's still warm. The cooler weather has not gotten down here yet, but it's a little bit cooler than it was in the summer. But it's not completely cool yet. And a lot of my autumn flowers are blooming, which is pretty cool. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play something from recently from one of the trials, and then it'll be over for the night after one this other clip. Okay, let's go. This way. We're gonna watch some of this. It's the from the gun cleaning trial. Hmm. All right. This guy, he shot his girlfriend in the head when he said he was cleaning his rifle when they were drunk, and it was really stupid. And this was like him on the stand before they're doing the verdict. We're gonna play some of this.
How much did you weigh in September of 2024?
210, 215 pounds.
Okay. So it looks like you've lost a considerable amount of weight.
A little bit.
Okay. How tall are you?
5'6".
In September of 2024, how long had you lived in the house on 32nd Avenue?
About 5 years.
Do you own it or rent it?
I had a mortgage.
Okay. How did you meet Paulina Wright?
We initially met on a dating app, and then we eventually met in person downtown a couple weeks after.
How did the first meeting go?
Went well.
Did you begin to see each other at that point?
Yeah.
At the time of her death, how long had you been dating Paulina?
About 2 years.
Tell us about her.
She was a great person. She was modest. She was respectful. She was loyal. She encouraged me to be a better person. She was just naturally beautiful.
Had you met her parents?
I did.
How often would you see her parents?
Every now and then.
Did they live in Marion County?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Where did they live?
I believe it's Citrus County, Florida City.
Did you have some knowledge of Paulina's upbringing?
Yeah, she told me.
What did she tell you?
She went basically through her entire childhood. We both did. She was adopted from Russia when she was 6 or 7. She has a twin sister and a brother that was adopted with her.
So the Wrights adopted her
Yeah,
from Russia.
yeah.
Did she have other siblings within the Wright family?
Yeah, she did.
Was she working in September of 2024?
She was.
What was she do? What did she do for a living?
She worked as basically, I would say, a secretary for a company out in the shore. She did their billing and purchasing and payroll and stuff like that. She was working on, actually in September, transferring over to a new job.
Do you know if she'd been to college?
I believe so, yes.
Did she have any kind of degree that you were aware of?
I believe she had an AA degree from CF.
And you said you'd been together for 2 years. Had you begun to discuss marriage at all?
We kind of joked about it, but it was obviously on the table. We were working towards that. You don't date someone for 2 years and not have that on the table, basically.
What were your living arrangements by September of 2024?
She was free to come and go as she pleased. She was still in her lease at an apartment complex, but we were actively speaking on, and it was going to be like in 3 or 4 months when her lease was up, she was going to be living with me full time.
Did she have a key to your house?
She did.
Let's talk about September 19th. What did you do that day?
We met up probably around 9 or 10 o'clock that morning.
How did you meet up?
She came over to my house. It was pretty standard. I was going into my long weekend of work, so pretty much any day we had off before that, we try to hang out. So it was a pretty typical day for us. We went out to lunch, hit a couple stores, and then was just hanging out around the house.
Where did you go to lunch?
Longhorn Steakhouse.
Was any alcohol consumed at lunch?
No.
Where did you go after lunch?
If I remember correctly, we went to Target and I think TJ Maxx, and then we came home.
And what did you do when you got home?
We just hung out, just watched TV.
All right. At some point that late afternoon or evening, did you decide to go out to dinner?
We did.
How did you choose the Mexican place?
We talked about a couple different options, and we landed on Mexican food. It was extremely close to the house, and we didn't really want to.
Had you been there before?
Yeah.
So you ordered food and margaritas.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about the drinks.
Well, we normally get one margarita when we're there because it's a large margarita. But it was 2 for 1s that night when we walked in, so and they were taking a while. We were there over an hour, so we just started ordering the 2 for 1 margaritas, and we landed on 3 by the time we were done.
How were they serving them?
And like little mug gauntlet things.
Okay. And 6 of them cost you $26.94. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that was less than $4.50 each.
Sounds about right.
Did they taste like they had any alcohol in them?
They taste a lot like sour mix, but
Okay. Now, the check that Detective Kern was able to obtain said your tab was opened at about 7:30 and then closed at 8:32 p.m. What did you do when you left the restaurant?
we drove straight home.
How far from the house is the restaurant?
5 minutes, easy.
Okay. And what did the two of you do when you got back home?
We changed. I don't really know what she was doing. She was doing her stuff, taking care of her cat. I fed my dog. That's when I came out to the living room and put on the football game and started doing the gun stuff.
Okay. Now, you changed out of whatever you had worn to the restaurant
Correct.
into the clothing that we've seen on the videos?
Correct.
Okay. And Paulina had a blanket on
Yeah.
and nothing else.
Correct.
Was that normal?
At this point in the relationship, yes.
Okay. So that was typical for her once she got home and got comfortable, was to disrobe and grab a blanket.
I wouldn't say 100% of the time, but it was very common.
Okay. Did you have any more alcohol when you got back home?
No.
Now, you called 911 at 10:52 p.m.
Yes.
I'd like you to walk us through that 2.5 hour period of time from the point you got back from dinner until that call was made.
So when I came in and sat down at the dining room table, I started cleaning my rifle because I had just shot it a couple weeks prior, or within a week. I was waiting for all my gun cleaning stuff to come in to clean that said gun. It was already all on the table. I saw it. I sat down and I started cleaning it. She was off doing other stuff in the house. And then she eventually came over and sat down and started talking to me. We weren't necessarily talking about the gun stuff. We were just hanging out. We talked about what we were going to do next week, like went through a bunch of different stuff. And then she started to show interest in the gun cleaning, so I started showing her parts, handing it to her, stuff like that.
Now, is this exclusively the rifle that
Yes.
we're talking about at this point?
Yes, it was just the rifle.
Now, and we'll kind of come back to exactly what you did with the gun stuff.
Okay.
But did the two of you stay at that table the entire 2.5 hours?
No, we were up and down.
Okay. So you would get up from the table, walk
Yeah.
some other part of the house?
Yeah, I had to use the bathroom at some point. I remember. I know she got up and went to the bathroom at some point.
Did she get up from the table?
Yeah.
Do you know what she was doing when she left?
No.
Okay. So this wasn't a continuous, let's take apart and put together this.
No.
Dale, have you thought about what happened that night and the mistakes that you made
Plenty,
every day?
pretty much.
What should have been different?
We shouldn't have been sitting across from each other.
Why didn't you move her?
I thought we were being safe. It was our normal spots to sit.
At a gun range during firearms training, how are trainees and the officers that go to do their annuals, how are they positioned?
In a straight line.
Okay. So nobody facing each other.
No. You're facing the target you're going to shoot at.
How many times have you gone through well, there's an initial firearms training, right, when you become a law enforcement
Yeah.
officer? Okay. And then you have regular training, is that right?
Yeah, once a year.
This is State's Exhibit 24. According to the state, this is a record of your training, including your firearms training. So in 8 years, you accumulated quite a bit of paper.
Yeah.
How many times do you think you'd been on a gun range while you were with the sheriff's office?
Maybe 12 times.
Okay. Had you ever been shaded by another shooter during those trainings?
Yes.
What does shaded mean?
It basically, flagged is another term for it. It means another officer on the range basically turns and points their gun at you.
So accidents happen.
They do.
Now, when you were talking with Detective Kern, you used the phrase dry fire exercise.
Yes.
Is that an accurate description of what you were showing Holly?
Yes.
Tell us what a dry fire exercise is and tell us that you never had to do one.
Yes, it's basically the first step to learning how to handle a firearm. It's the first thing you do in the police academy. It's really the only training and or teaching you can do inside of a house. It's basically just showing you how to hold the gun and pull the trigger.
Does it involve the sight picture
Yeah.
on a handgun or a rifle?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you show that to her and explain it to her
Yes.
with that rifle?
Yes.
Did you give her something to aim at?
Yes.
What did you tell her?
The picture on the wall.
Where was the picture?
A couple feet next to me.
Okay. Behind you and
Yeah.
away from you.
Yeah.
You didn't ask her to point the rifle at you.
No.
And you never pointed the rifle at her.
No.
And you weren't playing cops and robbers with guns.
No.
What did she think of the rifle?
She didn't really care for it. It was too heavy.
All right. So when she was done with the rifle, what happened?
I put it back together and I laid it on the end of the table. And that's when she picked up my handgun.
Where was the handgun?
It was just laying on the table.
Is that the gun that goes with your uniform or another gun?
It's my off-duty weapon that the sheriff's office gives us to carry.
Tell us what happened when she picked up the handgun.
Well, when I was laying down the rifle, I look up and she's holding the handgun. And obviously I knew that gun was loaded because it's the one I took to dinner. So I asked her to hand it to me, which she did, and I unloaded it, and then I handed it back to her.
And how did you unload it?
Taking the magazine out and ejecting the one that's in the chamber.
And where did you put the magazine and the round you ejected?
I just set it on the table.
On your side?
Yeah. Well, I was on that side of the table at that point.
Okay. Now, when you handed her the rifle, did you hand her the weapon loaded?
No.
Did she ever have the ammunition for the rifle?
No.
When you handed her the handgun, was there any ammunition with it?
No.
So that both of them were safe when you handed them to her?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do with, what did she do, and what did you show her to do with the handgun?
Well, I demonstrated first how to hold the handgun. I pointed it at the wall, like to the right of her, where the chalkboard was. Showed her how to hold it, showed her how to pull the trigger. Showed her how to work the action of the handgun, and then I handed it back to her.
Okay. Now, was all this going on because you wanted to teach her how to handle a handgun, or did she ask you to do this?
She was inquisitive. I had mentioned to her in the past that she needed to learn home defense, basically. I was like, I'd pay for a class, like I'd go with you. She made it sound like she had never touched a gun before, so I was like, there's always guns around my house because of my job, so I was like, you need to learn that type of stuff. She always kind of put it off, didn't really show any interest until that night.
Now, you've already said other things were going on while this exercise was playing out. Was the television on?
Yeah, we were watching football.
Okay. So this was a Thursday night?
Yeah.
So it was the NFL game?
Yeah.
Okay. And from where you were seated, could you see the television?
Yeah.
Okay. But you had to turn to see it?
Yeah, I was kind of angled, the exact angle I'm sitting now. How
did the rifle end up back in your hands?
I remembered I didn't do a function test on it when I put it back together. I was allowing her to kind of do her thing with the handgun. I didn't want to overwhelm her. So and we were just sitting there talking, and I was watching the football game.
Okay. And when you picked the rifle up, it had a magazine in it. Did it not?
Yes.
Because that's the way you had put it down.
Yeah.
Because when you put it down, did you intend to be done with it the first time? So how do you put up that weapon when it's clean and you're going to put it away?
I just put a magazine in it. I don't charge it. That's how we keep our rifles at the sheriff's office. We don't keep one in the chamber. And I typically just go store it.
And charge, what is that?
It means round in the chamber.
Okay. Does an AR style rifle have a different sort of way to load around?
Yes.
Explain it.
It has a charging handle where a handgun has a slide. Very similar, I guess, action you could say, but
All right.
different at the same time.
So when you had put the rifle down on the table, there was no bullet in the chamber,
Correct.
and it had a full magazine.
I don't keep. The magazine can hold 30 rounds. I don't
So
keep
you're
30.
5 short.
Yeah, I don't keep it fully loaded.
And that's to preserve the spring in
Yes.
the magazine?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had 25 rounds in it.
Yes.
All right. And when you picked it back up, while she's doing the dry fire thing with the handgun, how did you hold it?
I picked it up while watching the TV, and I was holding it like this.
Stand up to make sure all the
I was
cameras
holding
can
it like
see it.
this.
So you were kind of cradling.
Yeah.
So the magazine was down. Okay. And what was your intention? What were you going to do with it?
I was trying.
What is this function test you're talking about?
So when you disassemble a rifle and you put it back together, you have to do a function test to ensure that you put it back together correctly. If you didn't put it back together correctly, it's not going to fire the next time you need it to fire.
All right. And describe or explain the steps in this function test.
The bolt's forward, obviously. You have to pull the trigger and hold the trigger and then charge it. Release the trigger and pull the trigger again. And you're listening for the hammer to drop on the firearm to make sure you assembled it correctly. Because if you did not assemble it correctly, it's not going to make that click sound.
So you got it cradled in your arms,
Yeah.
barrel off to your left.
Yeah.
You're sitting across the table,
Yeah.
and you're kind of watching TV.
Yeah.
And you said you're listening for a click. So did you either put your head down to the rifle or bring the rifle up to your head?
Both. Like, it was because I was listening more so for a sound that you can't really see what you're looking for type of deal. It's internal.
Okay. So you have to listen for it.
Yeah.
When you pulled the trigger the first time, what happened?
What was supposed to happen? You heard a click.
And then when you charged it and pulled the trigger the second time,
That's when it went off.
I know you know now where the barrel is pointing. Were you looking at pointing it when you were doing that?
No, I was looking at the TV.
What did you do after you realized she was hit?
Called 911.
Did you go to her?
I did.
Now, what position did she start in? I mean, she's hit. Did she fall back, fall forward?
She was just sitting in the chair.
And did you maintain that position until the officers arrived?
Yeah.
So you were kind of cradling her head?
I didn't know what else to do.
Okay. Were you panicked at that point?
Yeah, I was freaking out.
So they got you out of the house. They told you to leave the house. Is that right? Had you seen the body camera videos before this trial began?
No.
Do you remember doing the things that you saw yourself do on the video?
No. I don't know.
The screaming, and rolling on the ground, and all of that. Do you remember it?
Not
Any
really.
of that happened?
Not really.
Do you remember all the things you said to the police officers there in your yard?
No.
What was going through your head?
I was just trying to figure out what happened, how I allowed it to happen.
And technically, Paulina is dead because you ended up pointing the barrel at her.
Yeah.
But you didn't aim it at her.
No.
Do you ever aim it at her?
No.
So when you told the officers we were pointing the guns at each other, I mean, what did that mean when it came out of your mouth?
I was coming to terms with what happened. We obviously pointing guns at each other. That's how this probably happened.
Did any of them ask you what that meant? To describe exactly what had happened?
No.
No. All right. Then you got driven to the police station, and they stuck you in an interview that I gather from seeing the blanket was a little cold.
It was.
How cold?
I was shivering.
Do you remember how long you sat in that room?
No.
Was the sun up when you left that building?
Yeah.
You got there at midnight. Did you know that? You knew Sergeant Kerr, right?
I did.
How did you know him?
Through passing through the jail. He used to work for the sheriff's office.
He knew your name?
Yeah.
He knew you preferred to be called Dale?
Yeah.
Instead of Leslie?
Yeah.
And the jury's seen your dialogue with Detective Kern. Did he ever ask you the detail that I had asked you today?
No.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
State any cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Taddy, is this your pen? I want to clarify a couple things that you just told us. So just to make sure, throughout most of the entire night, that AR rifle was in your possession.
Correct.
And when that gun went off, that AR rifle was in your control.
Yes.
You didn't slip. You didn't slip and fall, correct?
No.
You didn't drop the gun. You didn't drop the gun.
No.
You didn't misplace the gun or anything like that.
No.
In fact, when the gun went off, it was in your hands.
It was.
And when the gun went off, you were the one who pulled the trigger.
I was.
And when the gun went off, you were the one who intended to pull the trigger at that point in time.
Yes.
And the only reason why those firearms were out at that point in time was because you decided you wanted to clean them that evening.
I did.
And now, your AR, do you normally keep that in a gun safe at your house, or do you keep that out?
I keep it in my bedroom.
Okay. But you were the one who decided to take it out and bring it into the living room or into the dining room
It
table.
was already sitting on the dining
So
room
you
table.
put it there earlier?
Yeah.
And you decided to take out those cleaning products from Amazon.
Yes,
And you decided to clean the gun.
I did.
And in fact, you told us originally Paulina wasn't even anywhere near you when you cleaned that gun.
Correct.
But she later came over and she wanted to learn about the firearm.
She did.
And you decided to teach her about the firearm.
Yes.
And you decided to teach her about that firearm with loaded magazines and live ammunition sitting on that dining room table.
Yes.
You're very familiar with firearms, are you not?
Familiar.
In fact, one of your hobbies is you like to hunt.
Yes.
And you were a law enforcement officer, like you said, for 8 years.
Yes.
And you went under training every single year because you had to do an annual training, correct?
Yes.
And one of those things that every single year during that annual training they talk about is gun safety.
Yes.
And I know Mr. Taddy talked a little bit, like you said, when you're at the gun range, you guys are in a straight line.
Yes.
And in fact, there's a term called a hot range and a cold range. Is that correct?
Correct.
Hot range means that guns are being fired and nobody's allowed to go downrange. Is that correct?
Yes.
And a cold range means that people are going down to check targets or people are in that area to where there's a risk, so you have to put all guns down and nobody can have a gun in their hand. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in fact, there's general rules of safety that you guys learn every year. Like you always treat a firearm if it's loaded.
Correct.
And you never point it towards another person.
Correct.
And that you should not handle firearms, especially when drinking or intoxicated.
Yes.
And that you only point a firearm as something that you intend to kill or destroy.
That's correct.
I also want to talk about these trainings. When you do these trainings, you're shooting at targets, correct?
Yes.
And when you're shooting at these targets, you aim your firearm, get a clear sight picture
Yes.
using your sights,
Yeah.
and then you pull that trigger.
Yes.
When you were sitting at that table with Paulina, there was a point in time you activated that red dot sight.
Yes.
In fact, you told Detective Kern it was to show her how that sight worked.
Yes.
Show her how to get a sight picture.
Yes.
Show her how to aim at a target.
Yes.
You heard the medical examiner's testimony yesterday that when that path of that bullet went directly in her forehead and directly out the back of her head.
Yeah.
Correct? So that means at the time that gun went off, it was aimed directly at her. No further questions, Judge.
Any redirect examination?
Just briefly. So, Mr. O'Neill asked you if you intended to pull the trigger.
I did.
Did you intend to shoot Paulina?
No.
Did you intend to discharge that weapon?
No.
You thought it was going to click. No further questions.
Any recross examination?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, do any of you all have questions? If so, please raise your hands. Okay, write them down on a clean sheet of paper, please. Do you have one more coming? If so, raise your hand if you're still writing. lower juror there in the back row. I am having trouble reading your handwriting. It's the third word. I'm going to ask that you just clean it up for me. Thank you. Okay. All right. Council approach. Any other questions? If so, raise your hands. Oh, we have. Okay. Yeah. Nice nod. Take what time you need. Write it. Take what time you need to think out how you want to pose the question. No rush. Council, if y'all want to come in the meantime and look at the others. Put the white noise on. State defense, if you don't mind coming up and taking one last look at the draft that I'm going to photocopy for the jurors. I'll give them a copy to read along with while I read out loud. Also the separate verdict form. So it'll be a separate verdict form. So I give them a copy of the verdict form in the file. Yeah, so that's the copy they read along with that we're going to take up. Yes, that way they fill out that one, not the one in the packet. Yeah, it's okay. I don't mind to save paper moving the verdict form on that page. Y'all good with that? Save that 12 piece of paper. Yeah, I'll leave it as is. It's printed. Okay. All right. So we need 9 copies, one for each of the jurors. State, do you want a printed copy?
If you don't mind, yes, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like a printed copy?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, while those are being printed, can I use the restroom one more time before we?
Yes, sir. We'll have a couple minutes.
I want to make sure that we're
But before you leave, Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Taddy, how long do you think you need for closing argument?
I wouldn't think any more than 45 minutes.
Okay. I won't.
For me to judge.
Fair enough. I won't put a time restriction on it. You all take whatever time you need.
Yes, Your Honor.
Judge told me one time I had 5 minutes for my rebuttal closing. And then in the 12th hour of the jury deliberation, he says, I probably should have let you do your closing.
And y'all have what time you need today. Counsel, I've emailed you also an electronic copy of the final instructions and verdict form if you're going to be incorporating that in a PowerPoint or what have you. Are you both using PowerPoint in closing? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just let me know when you want me to engage the presentation screen, if you want that right at the outset or if you want to wait a little bit.
There was a stipulated fact, the person who unfortunately lost their life on the night of September.
Let me know when you're ready, Mr. O'Neill.
Should be up.
There we go.
Perfect. Intentional acts with unintended results. Quite simply put, that's why we're here today. That's manslaughter. As I stand before you today, and as Mr. Buxton told you yesterday in opening statements, and as I even discussed with you Monday at jury selection, this isn't a case where we're alleging or we're going to prove to you that Leslie Dale Boylou Jr. intended to kill Paulina Wright, thought about killing Paulina Wright, or killed her out of hatred, ill will, spite, or bad intent. However, what we did tell you we were going to prove, and what we did prove throughout yesterday and today, is that the defendant intentionally committed actions that led to the death of Paulina Wright. As the judge has been reading instructions, and as he said, he's going to read some other instructions, one of the things that he's going to go over with you in a few minutes is a jury verdict form, and it's going to look a lot like this. Quite simply, there's two options. Either you find the defendant guilty of manslaughter, or you find him not guilty. And we're going to talk about why the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of manslaughter, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But when you check A, there's an additional question, which is, did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that during the commission of the crime, the defendant personally carried, used, displayed, threatened to use, or attempted to use a firearm? And you have to check yes or no once you check A. So let's go through what exactly it is that I have to prove. And I know the judge just read it to you, but I kind of want to go through it a little bit more in detail. So to prove manslaughter, the state has to prove the following two elements. Number one, Paulina Wright is dead. Well, members of the jury, that part of your job for deliberations has already been done. You heard that there was a stipulated fact that the person who unfortunately lost their life on the night of September 19, 2024 was Paulina Wright. You heard from the medical examiner that Paulina Wright suffered a gunshot wound to the head, succumbed to those injuries, and unfortunately passed away. Element one is not in question. However, what you do have to determine is element two. That Leslie Dale Boylou Jr. either A, intentionally committed an act or acts that caused the death of Paulina Wright, or caused the death of Paulina Wright by his culpable negligence. So what does that mean? Well, as the judge read to you, in order to convict of manslaughter by act, it's not necessary for the state to prove that the defendant had an intent to cause death. Only an intent to commit an act that was not merely negligent, justified, or excusable, and which caused death. Let's talk about that for a minute. We've heard several statements from the defendant throughout his 911 call, body-worn camera, statements to Detective Kern, and even when he sat here today on the jury stand and talked to us. What was the one consistent thing he said the entire time? I was holding the gun, I pulled the trigger. He didn't slip, he didn't fall, he didn't drop the gun, he didn't accidentally pick up the gun in a way where he grabbed the trigger and made it off. What he's consistently said the entire time was, we were doing dry fire exercises. What's a dry fire exercise? That's when we fire the gun when it's unloaded. You pull the trigger, you hear it go click, and then you have to reset the trigger. What's resetting the trigger? You have to charge it. Pull that charging rod back, let the trigger reset, and pull the trigger again. What was one of the first questions I asked the members of the jury when I got up here on cross-examination? So when you had that gun in your hand and it went off, you intentionally pulled the trigger. Yes, an intentional act. That's where our job is done. I don't have to prove that he intended for that gun to go off. I don't have to prove that he intended for that bullet to hit Paulina Wright and for it to kill her. It's extremely unfortunate what happened that night. I'm not disagreeing with that. And I'm not disagreeing that this was unavoidable and other decisions could have been made to where we weren't here today. But unfortunately, no matter how anybody feels about the situation or how that went down last night, does not change the circumstances of the law, the facts, and what the law requires for me to prove, and for you guys when you go back to deliberate, what you have to decide whether we proved or not. Now, I know there was some other things that the defendant wanted to say on the stand to kind of explain how things happened. And members of the jury, I'm not one to say whether I believe or don't believe certain things. That's your job to determine a witness's credibility. But as the judge talked about, things that you get to talk about or consider when weighing a witness's credibility is whether it makes sense and whether it is consistent with the other evidence that we've seen and what we've heard. And I find it interesting today that when the defendant's on the stand, he's talking about how he's trying to manipulate this gun, and he's cradling it, but he's sitting and cradling it, and he's trying to cock it. You get to take that firearm into the jury room. You get to look at it. You saw Ms. Killinger yesterday standing in front of you displaying how that firearm works, how that firearm operates, what you have to do to charge that firearm. You have to pull that charging rod back and let it go. Cradling it, pulling it, it's not consistent with what happened. Holding it up to your head to hear if there's a click, but shooting Paulina Wright dead center in the forehead, not consistent with what the evidence was showing us. What is consistent is what he told law enforcement, what he told the 911 operator, what he told Detective Kern, and what he kind of a little bit told us tonight, or today, dry fire exercises. We heard a little bit about that training. One of the first things we do as law enforcement is we do dry fire exercises, and one of those reasons why we do dry fire exercises is practicing how to acquire a sight picture, how to aim down a gun and get our target, how to see it. When we're at the gun range doing our trainings, we take those guns, we aim right at our target. Talked about the rules of gun safety. Never point a gun at something you don't intend to shoot or destroy. Never point a gun at another person. You always point the gun at your target. That's why the red dot sight was on that night. Dry fire exercises, training exercises, looking at your target. Members of the jury, there's signs outside this courthouse. You can't bring in guns, weapons. I'm hearing you can't even bring in metal cups now. But you know what you're not prohibited from bringing in here? It's your common sense. This wasn't a situation where the defendant was pointing the gun at a wall next to Paulina Wright and the bullet curves and hits her dead center in the head, goes out the exact center of the back of her head, into the wall directly behind her. Clear shot that we even see in that photo. He intentionally aimed that gun at her. He intentionally pulled that trigger. He just did not intend for the outcome to happen. That, members of the jury, is why that's manslaughter. But let's talk, because there's an or in there. We talked about intentional act a little bit, but there's that second one too. Culpable negligence. Culpable negligence, as I said, is every person has a duty to act reasonably towards others. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intent to harm, that violation is negligence. But culpable negligence is more than a failure to use ordinary care towards others. For negligence to be culpable, it must be gross and flagrant. Culpable negligence is a course of conduct showing reckless disregard of human life or a grossly careless disregard for the safety and welfare of the public. The negligent act or omission must have been committed with an utter disregard for the safety of others, and culpable negligence is consciously doing an act or following the course of conduct that the defendant knew or reasonably should have known was likely to cause death or great bodily injury. Let's talk about that. What did he tell us today? The one thing that I should have changed, the one thing I know I did wrong, we shouldn't have been sitting across from each other. Because when we're sitting across from each other and I point a gun and I intentionally pull the trigger, it might go through the person's head and into the wall in the kitchen. Because when you're sitting across from each other, there's a chance that somebody's in the line of fire. That's why I asked those questions on cross too about hot ranges and cold ranges, something that the defendant is obviously very familiar with. But when you're at a gun range, anytime anybody crosses the imaginary line that you're sitting and firing those guns, that range goes cold. Meaning that everyone has to put the guns down and lay them down. Doesn't matter whether it's the person next to you or 5 rows down stepping out in front of that line. Because there's always a concern or fear that somebody could get hit with a bullet. This wasn't a situation where he had Paulina Wright slightly to his side but slightly in front of her. She was dead in front of her, doing training exercises, pointing guns at each other. And I understand. He said it today. He said it a couple times during Kern. Well, it was at their general direction. But members of the jury, that's not the case. How else do we know that besides just with the evidence of the trajectory? The other thing we talked about, and specifically what Dr. Lange talked about, that injury to Paulina Wright's finger. I'll be the first person to tell you, I know Mr. Taddy will probably say the same thing. No, Dr. Lange cannot tell you, any way, shape, or form, what Paulina Wright was doing with her hand moments before she got shot. That's a question for you guys to determine and for you guys to figure out. However, based off the circumstances, the evidence and testimony been provided, I would submit that one way is that the defendant was pointing the gun at her, and a natural reaction by most people, don't point that at me. Hey, don't point at my face. Because we know where it was aiming. Hey, don't do that. The person being taught how to safely use, own, and operate firearms was the one that night who had the common sense to go, don't point it at my face. Not the person with the years of experience, the years of training, familiarity with firearms. Let's talk about that training. I entered in a packet yesterday of the defendant's training records. It's a pretty big packet, but I kind of want to highlight a couple pages of why it was important and why I wanted to introduce that. The first one is these are 2 pages. The first one on the left is his history from 2016 to 2020. Or I'm sorry, 2017 to 2020. The one on the right is 2020 to 2024. And what you see is the number of hours that he completes for certain titles or courses in that time frame for certain topics. On the one to the left for firearms, it's 21 hours. On the one in the right from 2020 to 2024, it's 24 and a half hours. Indicating in that 8 years that he's with law enforcement, he had over 44 hours of training, courses, classes on how to use, operate, and the general functioning of firearms. And he even told you today, not in any of those classes, trainings, studies, do they suggest, do they tell you, do they have you point firearms at other people, point firearms at people with downrange, point guns even in general directions? Because that's not safe. And we talked about his training that he did every single year. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. And what you see at the top of all of those are rifle qualification courses. We actually kind of heard in a roundabout way a little bit about that yesterday with Detective Kern. And when Mr. Taddy was asking him questions about rifles and how we heard him in the interview saying, I don't know much about Daniel defense guns. And Mr. Taddy asked him, is that true? And he said, I have very little familiarity with assault rifles. In fact, I'm not even issued an agency one. I don't do the training every year. But you know who did? Leslie Dale Boileau Jr. And what's one of the things that we see every single year about halfway through on those lists when it's passed? Safety. Meaning every single year when he has to go get requalified to use an assault rifle exactly like what he shot Paulina Wright with, he has to go over how to safely handle and operate a firearm. He has to go over every single year what he told us today, which is you don't point guns at each other. You don't handle guns when you've been drinking or under the influence. You don't handle guns with distractions like loud TV with football in the background. You don't handle guns with somebody who doesn't know any experience. You don't point a gun at somebody if you're not intending to shoot them or destroy them. There's one thing the defendant said today on the stand when answering one of your questions that I think sums up very best what happened that night. And I'm sorry I forget the question that was asked to him. But the response he gave was, I didn't put much thought into it. That, members of the jury, is culpable negligence. Handling arguably one of the most deadly things on this planet with somebody who has little to no knowledge about it, pointing it at them, dry firing it, having live ammunition and loaded magazines on that table, playing with fire, picking up that gun, pointing it at a person, pulling the trigger, racking the gun, pulling the trigger again. And I kind of want to stop and circle on that for a minute. Because again, members of the jury, it's up for your interpretation to decide. But pay close attention to what he's talked about with Detective Kern and even kind of with his testimony, but that inconsistency. Because the way I recall it is he talks about how he was cleaning the rifle first. Paulina was off doing other things. He was cleaning the rifle. She wanted to see parts. He's showing her parts, puts it back together. They start dry firing that rifle. They're done with it. He was going to put it away. She grabs the gun. He grabs the rifle again and loads it. But then when Mr. Taddy today asked him, well, how did the gun go off? Well, I had just put it back together, and I wanted to make sure it was operating, and I wanted to hear that click. So was it that you cleaned the gun, had dry fired it multiple times, heard the click every time, pulled the charging rod back every single time, hearing the gun and feeling that trigger reset, pulling it, and then forgot you put a loaded magazine in it? Or is it what we just heard for the first time today, that that gun had never been dry fired until he actually discharged it and shot Paulina Wright? You get to make that determination. But members of the jury, at the end of it all, you don't even have to just take my word for it that it's culpable negligence. We heard it from the defendant multiple times throughout the 911 call, throughout the body-worn camera. I'm going to have you listen one more time.
God damn it, no! I knew we should have been doing this!
No! I knew we should have been fucking doing this! She has one. I don't know why we're fucking doing this! I knew this was a I know it looks really fucking bad. But I know better. I know fucking better. Why the fuck was I doing? I should not have let this happen! Fucking let this happen! I know better! I fucking know better! I should not have been fucking doing this!
Bicyclist is on the ground.
No! I know better! We should not have been doing that!
Which I know is fucking wrong. We should not have been doing that. She wasn't doing it properly because we were pointing the guns at each other. We were in our. I know better. That should not have been happening. Oh, it sounds bad, but after we go to dinner and have a few drinks, I get sloppy, I guess. I should not have been allowing that to happen.
That, members of the jury, is a negligent act or admission that was committed with an utter disregard for the safety of others. That's doing conduct that the defendant knew or reasonably should have known could have caused great bodily harm or death of Paulina Wright, but did those actions anyways. That was one of the questions that you members of the jury asked the defendant on the stand. That's your answer. The defendant knew the potential outcome, the potential results, and he did it anyways. That, members of the jury, is culpable negligence. That, members of the jury, is why when you go back in that jury verdict room and you get that jury verdict form, you're going to find the defendant guilty. And you're going to find that during that act of manslaughter that he did actually possess a firearm. Because that's what the evidence supports, what justice demands, and what the law requires. Thank you.
All right, so that was the prosecution closing of the gun cleaning gone wrong trial. And also the defendant on the stand. And we had a very good stream tonight. We had a very good crowd. Thank you all. And I'm about to end the stream. Thank you all for coming. And take care and peace.